Well, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Sorry to be a couple minutes late. My computer was acting funky, but welcome to the latest episode of Nitwits. I said that for pretty much the rest of the year, maybe with a couple exceptions here and there, I'm going to be doing some lighter streams. Some streams where I don't have to think as much because it's the holidays, man. We can kick up our feet, we can relax, we can engage our inner drama queens to get out any pent up frustration we might have over the fact that we have to deal with our family. And so I was trolling around looking for an episode of Nitwits today. I asked my community, I'm like, who should I react to? Nitwits is a show where I basically watch other people's content and I analyze the psychology of what's going on and I knit. I'm still working on my Mises Caucus shawl right now. There's like 5 balls of yarn attached to this thing, and so it's hard for me to show you guys what it is. But I'm still working on my Mises Caucus shawl. That'll be the project for the day. And I feel like I found the perfect episode of Nitwits for today. We're going back into the archives on this one. It's still slightly relevant to today, but it's a little bit older. And I want to tell you guys how we got to the place where we're going to be watching videos from about a year ago today. But before we do that, I don't want to hear any complaining about Carlin. I thought you only did serious content and I miss when you do serious content. And why don't you ever do serious content anymore, Carlin? Well, okay, hang on. Before we start complaining about the fact that I'm doing a stream that you might not like me doing, although if you're watching right now, I'm going to assume you're a drama queen and you guys know you like it. You do. But I do want to just point out, so Substack has been down for most of the day today. And it just came up like about an hour ago, and I had time to publish a new article. So if you are looking for the serious unwoke content, if you want to get your fix, I actually have a brand new article up on my Substack. It's actually this one down here, which I should probably pin to the top. Here, let's pin it to the homepage. There we go. It's the newest article. And it is about the Cambridge Public Schools hiring an adult industry sexpert, and yes, that is her in the picture, to teach middle schoolers without the parents being present. And so if you're looking for the serious content, I do recommend that you head over to carlin.substack.com and read this here article that took a lot of research to go and do. This is the adult industry sexpert that the Cambridge Public Schools hired. Look, she's currently up for an adult industry award right now. She also really hates men and she really hates white people. And she says all genders can have an abortion and she really hates capitalism. And she is a children's education sexpert for the Cambridge, Massachusetts public schools. There are some other sexperts they hired, like drag queens and stuff like that. Typical stuff, typical school stuff. So if you're looking for the serious content, just because I take breaks to do drama streams every now and again when it gets slower because it's the holidays, go read the serious content. It's okay. You can do both. We can have our vegetables in the afternoon and then we can have our dessert at night. So we're not going to be talking about this today. This is something you can go read on my Substack, Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. And this is part of my Schools Exposed project that I've been working on. And you can find out more information there. But that's about as serious as we're going to get today's, guys. The rest of this is going to be bitchy and drama. And it's going to be all about me. This is basically Carlin's month of narcissism come early. Listen, you guys know Carlin's month of narcissism comes in April, which is when it's my birthday. And so, but we're coming a little early today because in order to explain why we're going to be watching the content that we're going to be watching today. Oh yeah. Oh, she's naked. She's naked. She wasn't naked with the children. To be fair, to be ethically honest, she was not. But that is actually her. That is who the Cambridge Public Schools thought would be a good idea. Anyway, let's move on. So in order to explain why we're going to be watching the content that we're going to be watching today, we have to go back to Surviving Carrie Smith. This is another Substack that I'm doing about the ongoing 2-year smear campaign that Carrie Smith has been engaging with against me, showing all of the evidence, showing all the receipts. And the content that we're going to be watching today is directly related to this. Specifically, if you go to chapter 5, and I actually have a new page on Surviving Carrie Smith. This is, do I have a banner for this? Hang on. I don't have a banner for this. This is survivingcarriesmith.substack.com. And if we go to chapter 5, bing! Chapter 5 is called Carrie Smith Thinks I'm Her Abusive Mother. And the reason that I say that Carrie Smith thinks I'm her abusive mother is because about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, we got a lot to scroll through to get there. Hang on. We'll get there in a sec. There. No, not just yet. Oh, here it is. Because about a year ago, Carrie Smith on her Substack wrote an essay where she said I was her abusive mother, basically. She said, Carlin is an awful narcissist with borderline personality disorder. And now let me tell you about my mother, who was also an awful narcissist with borderline personality disorder. Of course, she never actually provided evidence that I was an awful narcissist with borderline personality disorder. But apparently Carrie doesn't have to provide receipts. I'm the only one that does. Anyway, so about a year ago, on December 12th, 2021, it took fucking forever, which is why I put it off, to be honest. We're talking much more time than I wanted to spend doing it, but it reached the point where I had to do it. I felt like I was backed into a corner. I felt like I had no other choice. It had been going on for 2 years. And I was like, if I'm going to be put in this situation, I'm going to make the best of it. But it legitimately took for effing ever. And I'm still not even done writing the book yet. So a year ago, Carrie wrote this essay about me. Now, this was at a time when I was trying to ignore Carrie. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't even read this essay until 2 months later. And then I started to realize how bad the situation was and that I probably shouldn't have been ignoring it. That was a mistake. All right. And so this happened on December 12th. Now, this is relevant to what we're watching today, but I want to fast forward us to present time. Okay. So I was looking around for a video to do for Nitwits today, and I happened to think of Josh Slocum. Josh Slocum is the guy who does this Disaffected podcast thing. Josh Slocum is also one of Carrie Smith's best friends. Josh Slocum is one of the people that Carrie uses to attack me. Josh Slocum is the person that Carrie references every single time that Carrie calls me a narcissist. It's because the expert Josh Slocum told Carrie I was a narcissist. So, yesterday, I noticed this tweet, and I don't know who this person is, but apparently Josh Slocum, who has been permanently banned on Twitter, and I'm not making a judgment about why he was permanently banned because I don't really know, nor do I really care, but I happened to notice that Josh Slocum made a personal appeal to Twitter to try to get his Twitter account back, and he did it through this person's account. Again, I don't know who this person is, but I did happen to see these tweets, and these tweets said, we're going to read the whole thread because they're very dramatic. Josh Slocum of Disaffected Podcast. Twitter. Why? I have been polite and waited patiently. Yet even now, with Elon's changes, you are still saying, yes, your account incites violence against people, and you, Disaffected, are dangerous enough that you may not be on our platform. Twitter, this isn't true. Truth matters. It really matters. This isn't right. I have never, ever threatened or incited violence against anyone, and I think you know that's true. Is that you don't personally approve of my views? I think it is. Because I don't believe that you genuinely believe I, a gay man who is a public commentator, is actually inciting violence against LGBTQ. I don't believe you believe that. And it makes me angry that you won't talk to account holders like humans. You won't specify incitement. You refuse. Just like every other social media company, you assert by libeling me that I have endangered people. This email will get trashed, I know, but I have a small hope that whoever is the real human being reading this will pause just for a second and acknowledge to themselves that Twitter is not dealing fairly with me. What you're doing isn't right. I'm not dangerous. I care deeply about the issues I comment on. I commend Twitter for finally taking down child abuse imagery. I talk about these issues on my show. I'm a guy who was beaten and exploited as a child. I want to protect children, and no, I'm not going to be nice about it. But not being nice isn't harm. It's not incitement. It's not violence. What a Christmas present it would be for anyone in your company to treat me fairly like a regular human being. I wish you a Merry Christmas, Josh Slocum. And then you can see here, help Josh out, folks. And one of the people tagged is, of course, Carrie Smith, because it always comes back to her. Anyway, I saw this and I hadn't thought of Josh Slocum in a really long time. And again, by the way, I'm not actually making a comment on whether or not he should be banned on Twitter. He probably should get his account reinstated. If I'm being honest about it, he probably was unfairly banned on Twitter because most people were. And so, unlike Josh and Carrie, I will be ethically honest and say, yeah, he's probably got a point. But that's not the point I'm making. So I saw this thread yesterday and I was like, all right, whatever. But then when I was looking for videos today to do for Nitwits, I was like, well, Josh Slocum used to diagnose me as a narcissist like all the time, but I've never actually watched any of Josh Slocum's content. I've never watched it. I just kind of assumed he didn't know what he was talking about. A, because he has no mental health background at all. B, because he's diagnosing me as a narcissist and borderline personality disorder when I've never even spoken to the man. And anyone who makes Twitter diagnoses and does it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, it's kind of like I don't take them seriously. I'm sorry, I just don't. So I went to his channel. I was like, maybe there's something here I can watch. Maybe there's something worth watching, and I can learn who this guy is. And maybe he's not as bad as I think he is. I don't know. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. So I started scrolling through his videos. Now remember that essay that Carrie wrote about me being her narcissistic mother was about a year ago. So I'm scrolling through Josh's videos and I get to a series of videos from about a year ago. Now, remember, this is a time when I was not paying attention to what Carrie was saying about me at all. I was not paying attention to it. So I stopped here and I was like, huh, this is about a year ago, about the exact same time. Oh, oh no, I just did something wrong. Okay. These videos, where are they? Oh, there they are. These videos came out about a year ago, about the same time that Carrie wrote her essay about how I'm her abusive mother. And I was like, huh, that kind of looks like me in that thumbnail, doesn't it? That kind of looks, if we look at these two thumbnails on the top, that kind of looks like me, doesn't it? And here, oh my God, he had a whole conversation with Carrie called Cult Training Begins at Home, a conversation with Carrie Smith. And these happen to be the figures that Carrie routinely calls me when I'm on Twitter. And there's me in the thumbnail. Huh, what a coincidence. So I was like, well, I know what I'm watching for Nitwits today. I know what I'm watching. We're going to talk about me. And I don't know if Josh actually directly mentions me in these videos or not. I truly have no fucking idea because this is the first that I have actually seen it. Scott says, you know what? Those images of you are actually quite good looking. The glasses need to change, but I think they're pretty awesome images. They made you look like a cyberpunk hacker. They probably put me through some like AI art software to create those images. It's like, bro, come on. Come on. So we're going to watch these videos. Now they're each an hour long, so we might be here for a while. but I want to hear what he has to say. I have no idea. I am not going to watch the one with Carrie, okay? I don't want to watch Carrie. I'm bored with Carrie. Like, I know what Carrie's going to say. I know what the sob story is going to be. I'm not watching that fucking video with Carrie. At least not today. I can't do it. There's not enough alcohol in my house. I only have 2 beers, all right? But I do want to watch these over the borderline in which Josh Slocum is clearly and overtly trying to insinuate that I have borderline personality disorder, which, spoiler alert, I don't have. Nor do I have narcissistic personality disorder. Though, man, I'll tell you what, the amount of times these people have called me a narcissist, I really wish I had narcissistic personality disorder at this point, because if I was an actual narcissist, I wouldn't care about any of this, because I would correctly perceive myself as so far above these people that it is beneath me to even comment on them. That is actually how I would react to this if I were the narcissist that they dream that I am. So that's what we're going to watch. We're going to see if Josh Slocum really is the asshole that I think he is. And I just think it's kind of funny, man. Like, this jackass has had videos about me on his channel for over a year and I didn't even know about it. That says a lot about your reach, Josh. It really does. It really does. All right, guys. So that's what's on deck for today. Now, a couple things before we get started. I already showed you the shawl I'm working on. This is Knitwits, which means that I'm going to be knitting while we watch this content and comment on it. I also want to show you this hat, because this hat is actually one of my favorite hats that I made. I made a bunch of them. This is a different version of it. This one came out a little wonky, and so I don't wear it that often. The black and white one, I need to redo part of it. But this is actually the same version of the hat with different colors. Fun fact, this is the hat that I was wearing when I was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. So if you saw me wandering around the National Mall, or I don't think I was wearing it to the Capitol, but I was wearing this hat out in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Maybe I should auction it off sometime. This is my January 6th hat, but you can see the pattern. It's a bubble pattern. I love the bubble pattern. This is a West Knits hat. This is honestly, the bubble pattern is one of my favorite things to knit. I love it. I think it's so great. And so that's what I'm wearing. I'm wearing it on my head too, but just with black and white instead of the maroon and the gold. Although I love the maroon and gold. Isn't that pretty? Oh, it's so nice. So I thought I'd show you guys that hat. All right. And lastly, I'm going to get a beer, because if I'm going to watch 2 hours of this guy, it's the holidays, man. I'm allowed to drink on a Wednesday. Hang on. The only beer I have is birthday cake. Our birthday cake malt beverage. And I only have 2 of them. So we gotta nurse it. Sin, you're having a hard cider? Oh, I bet that's good. Let's see. If you haven't, this is one of my favorite beers. It's birthday cake in the form of a beer. It's so good. Look at it, so pretty. If you're drinking something fun, Scott's drinking a mimosa. Oh, that's nice, Scott. Let us know what you're drinking in the chat. Kino says 10 more minutes and then he's going to get a rum and coke. Cheers, everyone. Happy holidays. I hope you all have wonderful holiday plans, or at least are sitting around. Yeah, happy solstice. Happy Hanukkah, Christmas, solstice, Kwanzaa. No celebration, but just taking a couple vacation days. I hope you're all doing well. All right, guys, please mount that like button for me. Cheers to all of you. Ah, so good. Let's dig in and learn about how Josh Slocum feels I am borderline personality disorder. Oh, this is ominous.
This week on Disaffected, mental health researchers are starting to say some of the things that many of us suspected all along.
Wait, can you guys hear that? You can't hear that. Hang on. You guys can't hear that. Hang on, I screwed it up. I'm fixing it. Chrome tab. There we go. I was like, that doesn't look right. Closed captions are on. All right, trying again. Oh, you could hear it. Okay. I didn't screw it up. Anyway. Take 2.
This week on Disaffected, Mental health researchers are starting to say some of the things that many of us suspected all along. We'll look at a recent study that suggests that it's parental abuse, not just schoolyard bullying, that is creating psychiatric instability in so many gender non-conforming children. And we're going to do things a little bit differently in this two-part episode. We've been talking on this show about the cluster B personality traits that
That's
are so
me.
evident in social justice activists. We see their abusive, over-the-top accusations against everyone who disagrees with them or against anyone who defies their commands. But what are they like behind closed doors? We'll take a close look at the abusive parenting style of people with borderline personality disorder. Because what you see in public is often just the tip of a dangerous iceberg, and it's the children who pay the highest price. This is a more personal episode than we've done before. Through movie clips and stories from my childhood, I want to show you what it looks and feels like to be a child prisoner. The people.
Wait. Not only am I Carrie Smith's abusive mother, but I'm also Josh Slocum's abusive mother. I knew Josh Slocum had an abusive mother because he's tweeted about it, and people send me those tweets every time he does it. But, well, so hang on. So we're already getting complaints about the volume. Guys, I can't do anything about the volume. I can't do anything about the volume in his video. I am sorry, okay? It is what it is. We'll try to work it out. I'm also fucking Josh Slocum's mother. Oh, great.
People and characters you'll see in this episode are the same kinds of people with the same psychology as the ringleaders of the increasingly frantic social justice warriors who are trying to destroy our cultural.
All right, so here's what we're going to do about the volume issue. Because I cannot control the volume from YouTube, I need everyone to cooperate. And by the way, I shouldn't be at the same level as the video, but his levels are screwed up too. I'm going to turn the volume on my microphone down, and then everyone else that is watching is going to turn the volume up on your computer, okay? You need to turn the volume up. I can't turn it up for you. So I've turned my microphone volume down, and I can barely hear myself right now. And now I'm turning the volume up so that I can hear myself and this video again.
My mother was not normal.
Now let me know if that's...
These activists
okay.
are not normal. None of this is normal. And we have to face it directly if we're going to have any chance to stop it.
So what we're already learning is that Josh Slocum is working out his mommy issues on the internet and has targeted me as his mother, the same as that Carrie has targeted me as her mother. Oh, great. All right.
Welcome to Disaffected. I'm Joshua Slocum. This is the show where we talk about the psychology that has pervaded our public life, particularly our political life and our cultural life, as we see on the left. We talk about personality disorders and about abuse dynamics, and we try to draw a parallel between the disturbed psychology that some of us are familiar with in the home, in domestic abuse, in child abuse, but that I believe we are seeing structuring our political discourse, and particularly what people call social justice activism or the woke left. I'm going to do a couple of things here at the beginning of the show. This is going to be a long one. I think we're actually going to break this into 2 episodes. But I have a couple of topical things.
Why am I in the thumbnail?
And then we're going to get it into a closer look at the
That's the answer
phenomenon
I
of
would
the
like.
mother with borderline personality disorder. But before we get there, I've told you in past episodes about living in the socialist state of Vermont. This state has gotten absolutely nuts about all things COVID, all things critical race theory.
You can leave, Josh.
And in prior episodes, I told you a couple of stories about the almost 100% compliance with the masking protocols.
All right,
in
we're
this
gonna
state.
fast forward. I don't want
And
to. I don't want to hear about Vermont masking a year ago. I just don't care that much. I mean, he's not wrong about Vermont though. This is why we're covering the Burlington, Vermont schools, or I'm covering it anyway. Vermont stuff, Vermont stuff, Vermont stuff. All right, this looks like he's getting into the other things.
we consider you to be in a high risk category if you're working in a restaurant.
No. Still masking.
These adverse experiences are the primary cause of the poor mental health status of gender dysphoria. So that treat a girl, or they don't like the Society for Evidence-Based Gender, as some call branch Covidians, simply will
Okay.
not. They will not give it to you. They won't acknowledge it. And it's not that they're stupid, and it's not that they're uneducated. They are religiously committed to this. So chalk that up to the governor's exceedingly long list of unconstitutional and irrational and probably illegal under the Civil Rights Act orders that he's given out here in Vermont.
He probably did. If he doesn't talk
There's
about
so
me, I'm
much of it, I could do a
even
whole
just
show
like
on it, but it would bore
indirectly, I'm
you
gonna be
because it
upset.
would all be local politics. Something else topical that relates to some things we've talked about in recent shows. An article came out from the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, SEGM, about a study that took a look at.
I also don't care about this. Sorry. I want it. We need to get to the part about me. Sorry, guys. I'm sure this is very important, but this is not what I want to talk about. And these are long videos, so if we can fast forward through some of it, it's like, man. Okay, now he's talking about his mother. Thank God for captions.
So as always, I'm willing to be wrong. And if somebody presents evidence to me that indicates that there is a different explanatory pathway than this, I will consider it. But I don't think they're going to. This is what's really going on. I feel confident in saying this.
I don't think Josh Slocum has any desire to ever
I
admit
don't
that he's
believe there's
wrong
any
when he
such thing
obviously
as a
and
gender
clearly is.
identity. I believe that there are people and children who believe that they have an internal sense that they're supposed
thanks,
to be
Vince. I
the
appreciate
opposite
that.
sex. Remember, I told you in the last episode, that happened to me. I believed that I was a mistake. I used to pray to God at night that I would either be a normal boy who didn't think about girly things and didn't think about boys in that naughty way that I thought about them, or that I would wake up a girl because I had a birth defect and I was a genetic anomaly. Yes, people do actually believe this and they internalize this, but it isn't real. It's a psychological disturbance. It's mental illness. Most of these children will turn out to be gay. I've seen estimates from between 60 to 90% of them turning out to be gay. I strongly suspect it's closer to 90%. It is true, and I have known such children, and I've known adults who are heterosexual who've talked to me about their history. There are heterosexual straight kids, or kids who will turn out to be straight as they go through puberty, who were, quote, gender nonconforming, sissy boys and butch girls. Never had any homosexual inclinations, but got treated the same way. And when those children get picked on, when they get bullied, they are experiencing homophobic bullying, even though they themselves are not homosexual. But most of them turn out to be gay. Study after study after study shows this. This is transing the gay away. This is monstrous medical mutilation.
He's not wrong about this. I don't like the way he's presenting it, but he's not wrong about this.
Where does it come from? What kinds of things go on that make a kid feel this way? Before we go to the break, I'm going to set up the next few segments for you. And I want to tell you that this is not going to be an easy episode to watch. It's not going to be easy for me to do. I'm nervous about it right now. It's graphic and it's personal. We're going to look at what it is like to grow up in a household headed.
See, what Josh has done to me before is he what he does. So Bad Girl Beck says, I've watched both these episodes a couple of times. I'm pretty sure there's any, I think you're saying not anything in them about me. Well, I am in the thumbnail. That's me in the thumbnail. I guarantee you that's fucking me in the thumbnail. And what Josh has typically done in the times that I've heard him allude to me is he basically dances around that he's talking about me without ever actually saying my name. In fact, he did it in an episode that wasn't too far away from when he filmed this one. And so it could very well be that Josh was clickbaiting me by putting me clearly on the images of these thumbnails, expecting that I would find it a whole lot sooner than I did because I don't really care what Josh has to say. And so I wasn't looking for it in the first place. It could be that he did that. It also could be that he's trying to allude to me without saying my name. And I just want to hear what he has to say. If we get into a little bit of this episode and we find out that it's really not about me at all, maybe I'll just listen to his content. Maybe I'll just find out that his content isn't really as fucked up as I think it is. And that's a possibility too. We can also skip around and maybe watch something else, but we're going to see.
By a mother deranged with borderline personality.
Hang on. You're not blocked, asshole, but if you want to start whining in my chat about, oh, me conservative, when you know very well I'm not a conservative, then we can remedy that quite quickly. No whining in my chat. If you are going to disrupt things, I will block you. Do you understand? This is not the first time I've warned you, dude.
Disorder. And I'm offering this to you. I'm inviting you. If you are somebody who grew up with a mother or a father like mine, I want you to recognize that this happens to other people. This is only the 12th episode of this show, but I'm already getting emails from people who say, oh my God, I thought it was only my father who did this. Or, I can't believe the story you told. You literally were writing my childhood. This is the first time I've ever known that it wasn't just my mother who was crazy in this particular way. Or, I had no idea there was a psychiatric category. I had no idea there was an explanation for why my mother treated us the way she did. So if you are one of those people who grew up in a household like mine, I offer this to you. I want you to recognize that you're not the only one, that other people went through it. And if you are a listener or a viewer who thankfully did not experience this kind of child abuse, I'm inviting you to look behind the closed front door. I want you to know what this can look like when no one else is watching. I didn't know when I was a child whether anybody knew what my mother was doing. I think probably some people suspected, but I think that even those teachers and guidance counselors would have been horrified if they could see what was really going on in our household.
Hang on, I'm going to pause it. I'm going to pause it here because, again,
we're going to get right.
Josh Slocum is a guy that has diagnosed me as having both narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder multiple times on the internet without ever speaking to me. And so what I want Josh Slocum to know at this juncture is I did have an emotionally abusive childhood. I absolutely did. And I tried to get help and no one would fucking help me. Now, I have forgiven my parents for their mistakes. Broken people, hurt people, mistakes were made. I have worked through my own feelings about my childhood rather than working out my mommy issues on a stranger I don't know on the internet. But I find it a little disingenuous for someone who has repeatedly diagnosed me with a personality disorder without ever speaking to me, pretending that he is an expert in this area and that he's trying to help people. No, he's not. Josh Slocum is working out his own mommy issues on the fucking internet. That is what he's doing. It is unacceptable to diagnose people as narcissists that you have never spoken to.
Right into it. We're going to talk about it in detail, and I'm going to show it in graphic detail. We're going to use a couple of movies. This is the part where I have to talk about the fact that things that aren't funny are also funny. Two movies that that obsessed me as a child and that I've maintained an interest in my entire life. Mommy Dearest and Carrie, the 1976 horror film Carrie. These are movies that
There are no
are,
coincidences. The universe has a sense of humor. That's all
well,
I'm going to say.
Mommy Dearest, of course, is the film depiction from Christina Crawford's memoir called Mommy Dearest. Christina Crawford was the adopted daughter of movie star Joan Crawford. And the movie is widely panned for being over the top and ridiculous. And it's become something of a camp cult classic. I'm not quite sure why it hasn't risen to the level of popularity of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, because God, it is an awful lot of fun to go to a midnight screening of Mommy Dearest, bringing your own cold cream to put on and your wire hangers. But it is certainly something that almost all gay men know. And the 1976 movie Carrie was the filmed version of Stephen King's first book of the same title, Carrie. And nominally, it's a supernatural story. It's the story of a teenage girl named Carrie and her mother, Margaret, Carrie and Margaret White. Carrie is telekinetic, meaning she has psychic powers. She can move objects. She can make them fly about. Her mother is a deranged religious fanatic.
Yes, I just want to point out this because Deborah is absolutely correct, and this is why I don't typically diagnose people on the internet. I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I don't diagnose people anyway. But I usually never diagnose people on the internet unless I really reach a breaking point where I don't give a fuck anymore. And Deborah says, I'm coming in late, but from the ethics manual, there are actually rules of behavior for counselors and diagnoses without actually meeting a person is considered unethical. Yeah, that's exactly right. If Josh Slocum was an actual psychologist, and again, as a reminder, he is not, he is a funeral director. It would be completely unethical for him to be running around diagnosing everyone on the internet with a personality disorder. Completely and totally unethical. He'd lose his license.
Played by Piper Laurie. Sissy Spacek played Carrie. Piper Laurie played her mother, Margaret White. And people look at the role of Margaret White and say, oh my God, it's so histrionic, it's so over the top. And it is histrionic, it is heightened. Even Piper Laurie, who played Margaret White, still in interviews says she laughed out loud when she got the script because she said nobody can actually act that way. And I played it so unbelievably over the top. There's a reason why this movie terrified me and compelled me when I was a child. And it's because it looked like home. It's only slightly more histrionic than the woman that I grew up with, only very slightly. And so neither of these movies exactly describes the household that I grew up in, but there are striking parallels and similarities. I mean, if you ask me for a one-sentence description of what kind of person was your mother, what do I need to know about her to get the feel? I would say,
oh, he defamed you to that bitch? Of course he did. Of course he did.
A trailer park Joan Crawford, a cross between a trailer park Joan Crawford and Margaret White in Carrie. My mother was not a religious fanatic, but in many ways, her delusions and derangements had a sort of religious mania quality to them. So we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start looking at these two movies.
Right.
And
his sound levels are awful. All right, I don't want to get in trouble for playing these clips, to be honest. Okay, he's doing commentary or something. Well, I guess we can play the clips. Fine.
It makes her angry. Christina, her daughter, is pretending to be asleep in the next room. She's picking up a dress on a hanger, and she's walking over to Christina's bed.
She's getting old. What do I get? A daughter! Who cares as much much about the beautiful dresses I give her as she cares about me. What's wire hangers doing in this closet?
This is what they think I'm like in private.
Christina's cowering on the bed.
Beautiful dresses.
As I'm watching this, what I'm thinking is, this is how Carrie Smith and Josh Slocum think I behave in private. Because I have a tone on the internet that they don't like. This movie's free on YouTube. Oh, thank you, John Morgan. Pro tip. Just to confirm, I don't care what hangers Victor uses in the closet. I don't care.
You treat them like
Joan's
they're
pulling
some
everything out of the
dish
closet.
rag. You $300 dress on a wire hanger. We'll see how many you find hidden some here. We'll see. We'll see. Get out of that bed. All of this is coming out. Out. Please. Out.
She's pulling all of her clothes out of the closet and throwing it on the floor.
We're gonna see how many wire hangers you've got in your closet. Why? Christina, get out of that bed. Get out of that bed.
She's about to start whipping her with
You
a hanger.
live in the most beautiful house in Brentwood, and you don't care if your clothes look scratched from wire hangers. And your room looks like a $2 a week furnished room in some stupid backstreet town in Oklahoma. Get him, clean up this mess.
Joan's walking into the bathroom that is connected to the bedroom suite. And she's looking at the floor. She finds a spot.
Did you scrub the bathroom floor today? Did you?
Yes, Mommy.
Yeah, apparently this is what I do to keep my cult in line. Apparently. Are you fucking shitting me? Wow. That would be a good casting, Kino. You're right about that. Helen Bonham Carter would do a great job with this role.
Yes, Mommy, what?
Yes, Mommy, dearest.
When I told you to call me that, I wanted you to mean it.
Stop spreading rumors, bot.
She's dragging her into the bathroom.
Look at this floor. You call that clean? Do you?
Miss Jenkins said it was clean.
Jenkins said it was clean. Do you think it's clean? Do you think it's clean? Look at that. Do you?
Yes, I do.
She's throwing her to the floor. Scouring powder is going to start flying
We're gonna
everywhere.
clean this floor. You and me together. Go. Go scrub hard. Scrub. Scrub.
This floor's already clean.
It's not.
I
The
just
floor's not clean. Look at it. This floor is not clean.
She's hitting her with the scouring powder.
It's not clean. Nothing is clean. Oh, light is a mess.
Mommy. Mommy. I don't understand. Oh.
Yeah, Sin is making a great point in the chat. Listen, man, I don't lack sympathy for people who went through this type of thing in childhood. I really don't. Again, my childhood was not rainbows and unicorns. I barely opened my mouth for most of my childhood in my own home. That's how bad it was. I wasn't allowed to speak in my own home. And so I do have great sympathy for people who have experienced this type of thing because I understand. However, you don't work out your mommy issues on the internet. You go to fucking therapy. And I have a whole lot less sympathy for people who choose to publicly take out their abusive childhood on people on the internet that they don't even know. It is not acceptable to use a platform as your personal therapy when you are inflicting your emotional baggage onto other people. And if Josh Slocum had actual training in mental health, he would know this. It's not acceptable to force your baggage onto other people.
Clean up this mess.
Ow.
Figure it out.
This is a very famous scene. Most people know this scene. If they know nothing else from this movie, they know this scene. And it's over the top. Drag queens do it. I did parodies of it when I did drag in college. And it's a case of things that aren't funny at all being very funny. But that kind of humor, that camp humor that gay men have, it's a defense. You either acknowledge the horror of what you're living through in front of you, or you make a joke about it.
He's not wrong about that.
And sometimes you do both. Joan Crawford was an extraordinarily troubled woman.
That's creepy as fuck.
You don't say, Slocum.
That's creepy. What just happened there?
I have a lot to say about this.
Apparently so.
I told you in past episodes that I read Mommy Dearest when my mother wasn't looking. I think she'd gotten it out of the library, or she had the paperback in the house. And this movie came out in 1981, and from 1980 to 1984, we lived in Orange County in Southern California, and that's when cable television came out, and this
YouTube is not therapy, Josh.
this used to run
It's
on
not
HBO
therapy.
after it was done with its theatrical release, and sometimes on other channels. Back in those days, I know some people in a generation behind me had 2 or 3 channels. When I was a kid, you had up to 11 channels if you had the right kind of antenna and bunny ears. And in the, so for those of you who grew up in a world when you didn't have entertainment on demand, you had to wait until the next week for the next episode of a show to come out. There was no such thing as binging. And if you wanted to see a movie again that had been in popular wide release, you had to wait for it to be reshown on network or syndicated television. Mommy Dearest was on a very heavy rotation, and my sister and I were not allowed to watch it. If my mother saw us watching it, we had to watch something else. But we would watch this absolutely transfixed, because this is how our mother acted. Joan Crawford was an alcoholic. My mother was not. You don't need alcohol to act this way. It helps, but it isn't necessary. And Joan Crawford has functioned as, for me, it's something like a muse, but that's not quite the right word for it. I have been fascinated with her and with portrayals of her since I was a young child, and for reasons that did not become clear and obvious to me until I hit my 40s. And if you're wondering if this is the reason why so many other gay men are fascinated with her and with women like her, I'm here to tell you that I think it is. I think this was a way of understanding and exploring my mother in a safer way than
Wait.
acknowledging the truth of who she really was.
Did he just say basically that all gay men have abusive mothers like Joan Crawford, and that's why they're all obsessed with Joan Crawford? I don't think that's fair.
One of the things that you start thinking about when you come to reckon honestly with your past and what happened in your house, people tell you to have empathy for your parents, right?
That's good advice, actually.
To understand them.
Yes.
People mean different things by empathy, and a lot of people mean sympathy. They're not the same thing. A lot of people wanted me to have sympathy for.
Here is the deal. As I see it, Deborah might have other opinions on this because she's a clinician and I'm not. But here is how I think about having empathy for your parents when when mistakes were made during your childhood. I think that, when parents act like that, it's probably because they didn't have a rosy and cheery childhood either, and that is how they learned how to parent. And I don't and a lot of the reason that I do what I do today is because I was not allowed to speak when I was a kid. You want to know why I talk so much today and put my feelings and my thoughts on the internet very, very publicly today? Because I was not allowed to speak when I was a kid. So if I had had a different childhood, I probably would not be doing this today. And so for that, I can forgive my parents for what they did, because what they did was the thing that drove me to do what I'm doing today. This wouldn't have happened otherwise. So was it a happy, rosy childhood? No. Absolutely not. Do I still have baggage that I carry from my childhood? Yup. Have I been to therapy to work out my mommy and daddy issues? Yes, I have, because it's not responsible to do it on the fucking internet. But, if you don't work out your issues with your parents, you are just going to carry that baggage with you and inflict it onto other people, which is exactly what Josh Slocum has done to me, which is exactly what Carrie Smith has done to me. Because, excuse me, because Carrie and Josh have not worked through their issues. They haven't forgiven their parents. They're still hanging on to it. And so then they inflict that baggage onto other people. And if we're honest about it, it has nothing to do with me. They're not putting their baggage on me because of anything related to who I am or what I've said or what I've done. It has nothing to do with that. Like, I could be anyone. If it wasn't me, it would be someone else. And there probably have been other people that they've inflicted their baggage on because they haven't worked it out themselves. So I guess the moral of the story is, it's like, if you didn't have the greatest of childhoods, welcome to the club. There are a lot of us that did not have the greatest of childhoods. But the advice I would give, and I know that this is easier said than done. Believe me, I understand that this is easier said than done. But at some point, You have to forgive your parents for the mistakes that they made. Because and it has nothing to do with your parents. Even if your parents are dead, you have to forgive them for the mistakes that they made because you don't want to inflict your baggage onto other people and you don't want to carry that around yourself for the rest of your life. It's a gift that you're giving to yourself. It really has nothing to do with your parents. It's a gift that you're giving to yourself. And so that's why the therapists say to do this. Let's see. Deborah says, Carlin is correct about the parenting cycle. Breaking the cycle is a way for people to find their paths in their lives. That's exactly right. Family systems therapy is the way to work through these generational family issues. Hurt people, guys. If you don't want to be someone that inflicts your baggage onto other people, then you need to forgive the people who have wronged you. And you need to find a way to put it in perspective to say that there were reasons that this happened. And quite frankly, what was there benefit to you going through that misery? Was there benefit? Like, did it help you in some way? And again, like I said, the fact that I didn't speak at all during my childhood did end up helping me. Ultimately, wasn't pleasant to go through at the time, but did it ultimately help me do what I'm doing today? Absolutely. And for that, I have to be grateful because I would not be doing what I'm doing if not for that.
From my mother. She's a very sick woman, they'd say when I'd recount something like this. Well, yes, indeed, she was. She is. But it's too much to ask a child who was treated like this growing up to have direct sympathy for somebody. I couldn't even admit that a lot of this was real for a long time. And so I don't know if sublimation is the right word, but Joan Crawford was a stand-in for my mother. And it was easier, and it has been easier for me to understand and empathize with the kind of person she is by doing it through Joan Crawford rather than directly with my mother. That scene could have been filmed in our house. My mother would come into the bedroom. You never knew when this was going to happen. Would you come into the bedroom in the dead of night?
He's doing a therapy session on the internet.
And turn on the overhead light and start going through my drawers, seeing whether I had folded my clothes correctly. Did I mate the socks right? Weren't allowed to take the socks and turn the tops inside out. That would wear out the elastic. That would get you a punishment. You had to just fold them together. And if things weren't folded correctly, if there were shirts in the top, everything, the underwear had to be in the top, the socks had to be on the top, the socks had to be on the left of the drawer, the underwear had to be on the right of the drawer. And if you got something wrong, it got thrown out, and it got thrown out on the floor. Do it over. And when she really angered herself up, she would pull me out of bed, sometimes by the scruff of the neck, my collar, or she'd take my ear and twist it. She'd twist my ear until I screamed and then pull me downstairs and go into the kitchen midnight and start going through the dish strainer, looking for spots on the dishes. It was uncannily like this scene.
I agree, Reagan. He needs to go to therapy.
And like young Christina,
it is sad.
I couldn't see what was wrong with the dishes. I couldn't see the spots that she could see because they were in her mind.
Kind of like you diagnosing people you don't know on the internet, Josh.
You know, what kind of crazy person goes through the dish strainer, pulls out a dish, finds a water spot on it?
Okay, I do actually have great sympathy for him. I really, really do. So if I'm going to be like a little bit of a bitch, it's because he has inflicted his shit on me and I don't like it. So anything that I say, I don't want people to think that I don't actually have sympathy for what he went through, or empathy, sympathy, whatever, both probably on some level. But the fact is that Josh Slocum literally thinks that I'm the person that's in that video clip. He sees that in me when it doesn't exist. And that's what Josh Slocum needs to work on, because he literally sees his mother everywhere, even when his mother isn't there. Just because a person might look at someone the wrong way or have a haircut they don't like or uses a tone that he doesn't find appealing, not everyone that uses a tone or has a fiery personality is your mother, Josh. So he's literally doing exactly what he is describing his mother doing. He is seeing things that are not there.
And gets up in their child's face and says, "Does this look clean to you? Does this fucking look clean?" And if I didn't answer correctly or if I took too long, I get backhanded across the face or I get cuffed on the back of the neck. "Why are you doing this to me?" she'd say. "Why the fuck are you doing this to me?" There's a book that I want to recommend to you. If you want to understand what it's like for children of borderline mothers, there is only one book that really captures it. It's comprehensive and was a revelation to me. It's called Understanding the Borderline Mother by Dr. Christine
Exactly,
Ann Lawson.
Kira.
Well worth your time. It's expensive. It's not a cheap book. Expect to spend at least $60 to $75 on it. It's worth every penny. I want to read you a few things from Understanding the Borderline Mother. Dr. Lawson, I don't know an awful lot about her, but she has treated patients, clients who are victims of borderline parents. Some of her patients, I'm sure, develop borderline personality disorder themselves. And I have never seen an examination of this psychiatric syndrome that so thoroughly understands both the motivations of the person, the mother with borderline personality disorder, but also the inner landscape of her children. She says this: "Children who grow
You're
up
not
with
wrong,
borderline
Allison.
mothers live in a make-believe world that is neither fiction nor fantasy. Borderland is an emotional world where loving mothers resemble storybook characters, helpless waifs, frightened hermits, bossy queens, or vindictive witches.
It is.
This whimsically dangerous world is filled with contradiction and fraught with emotional storms that defy prediction. A 7-year-old patient drew a picture of her borderline mother as a wicked witch, threatening to turn her into a frog with a wave of a magic wand. Trapped in a world that others cannot see, feel, or understand, the borderline's child feels hopelessly lost." Christina Crawford, the adopted daughter of actress Joan Crawford, grew up with a mother like this and described her experience in her famous autobiography. Quote, "Each time I ran headlong into an abyss, that black hole where nothing followed logically, where fabrication and anger and turmoil ruled supreme, that place where there was no help and no peace, no escape from the juggernaut of chaos. From her throne in the eye of the hurricane, brandishing her magic wand of obsession, ruled the queen of chaos herself, Mommy Dearest." Lawson uses the framework of fairy tales to categorize the different faces and the different aspects of the borderline mother. And some of these faces, some mothers display all of them, some cycle through them, some show predominantly one face, but may put on a different mask in a different situation. And she breaks them into the waif, the hermit, the witch, and the queen. What I'm talking about with my mother has been all of these people. But
So is Carrie, as it turns out.
what really characterized our childhood was my mother, the witch, the vindictive witch, and the queen sometimes. This is how she describes the witch mother.
Listen, there is a part of me that, like, even though I don't think Josh Slocum knows as much as he thinks he knows about these topics, and I obviously think he needs to go to therapy and work out his mommy issues in private rather than publicly on the internet, I actually think there is something to be said for, oh, here we got a Josh Slocum fan. We've got a Josh Slocum fan. Look at this. So just so I'm clear, you deny you're a narcissist, but you're watching this video to see if he talks about you? I was literally in the thumbnail, bro. I was literally in the thumbnail. So you can stay, but you are not allowed to be a douche in my chat. So what I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted is that I actually do like, on some level, that he's talking about this and he's sharing his experiences, because he probably is helping people by talking about his experiences. He probably is helping people who haven't heard someone else talking about these sorts of things before. I think vulnerability is a good thing. I think talking about the ups and downs of life is a good thing. I think that we should be more human on the internet, and human beings are not always perfect and put together. Um, and so there is some part of me, I'm kind of like, all right, it's kind of brave of him to do this, to be honest. I don't think it's necessarily the best way to handle it, but there is something to be said for the fact that he is being vulnerable, and I think it takes a certain amount of bravery to do that. And so, I'll give him that kudos.
The darkness within the borderline witch is annihilating rage. Her inner experience is the conviction of being evil, and her behavior evokes submission. The witch can hide in any of the other three profiles as a temporary ego state. She is filled with self-hatred and may single out one
That's
child
the
as
Carrie
target
Smith
of
rules
her
of life.
rage. The witch's emotional message to her children is, life is war. The Median mother is the most pathological and rarest type of witch. I want to acquaint you with the clinical description of the symptoms of borderline personality disorder. Kevin, can we put up the graphic that lists those 9 different characteristics, please? These are from Dr. Lawson's book, but they closely mirror the descriptions of the symptoms of borderline personality disorder that you'll find in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So they are: number 1, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Number 2, a pattern of unstable and intense relationships. Number 3, unstable self-image or sense of self. Number 4,
Except they were at a time when this whole crew of people were directly attacking me and diagnosing me as a narcissist on the internet all the time. And Josh Slocum has diagnosed me as a narcissist and a borderline personality disorder on the internet multiple times. And it happened to be right after his interview with Carrie, in which Carrie talks about the cult of her abusive mother. By the way, Carrie Smith has also written an essay about how I'm her abusive mother. I'm sure it's all just a coincidence that Josh Slocum used a picture of me on those thumbnails right around the time when he was diagnosing me with this exact personality disorder publicly, when he's never spoken to me in my life. I'm sure it's all just a coincidence that the images he used on those thumbnails looked exactly like me. Sure. Yeah, probably true.
impulsiveness and behavior that could be self-destructive, spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating. Number 5, suicidal gestures, threats, or self-mutilating behavior, hitting, cutting, or burning oneself. Number 6, intense moodiness, rapid mood changes. Number 7, feelings of emptiness. Number 8, inappropriate, intense anger. And number 9, stress-induced paranoid thoughts or dissociative symptoms.
Like
Loses touch
Carrie.
with reality. Not everybody with borderline personality disorder has all 9
Carrie
of those
Smith
symptoms.
has a lot of those
And
symptoms.
when you do diagnosis
Sorry,
through
she
the
does.
DSM,
I'm not
I believe
diagnosing. I'm just
the
saying she has a lot of
cutoff
those symptoms.
is that in order to qualify for a diagnosis, that somebody has to consistently exhibit at least 5 of the 9 traits. But I can tell you that my mother has exhibited all of them repeatedly. You'll see some of this in a couple more clips that I'm going to show you later in the show. But there was a little bit of it that peeked through in that scene that I just showed you. And again, this is what Christina Crawford called a night raid. And that's a term that I use as well because it's better than any other I've found. It's hard to hear the dialogue, but Joan Crawford came from incredible poverty and child abuse herself. She was born in Texas, in San Antonio, I believe. Single mother who in those days, somebody that might have been described as a slattern. Very likely sexually abused at a young age, perhaps quasi-incestuously by her mother's husband. Treated very, very badly. Like my mother, she came by her craziness, honestly. And in that scene, she tells Christina that her messy, horrible room looks like some 2-bit apartment in a backstreet town in Oklahoma. Joan Crawford's name was Lucille LeSueur. She got the name Joan Crawford after one of the movie magazines ran a Name the New Starlet contest. And she built a woman called Joan Crawford that she presented to the world. And she fought and fought to be better than the white trash background that she came from. She was deeply ashamed of where she came from, and she didn't ever want to go back there. And my mother...
We may watch a different video after this, just so you guys know.
Came by her crazy the hard way, too. She was born in 1955 in upstate New York. And her parents...
But I'm actually interested in hearing about his mother, to be honest.
I think her mother probably had borderline personality disorder as well. Both of her parents were alcoholics.
You shouldn't be diagnosing other people's parents when you haven't met them, Josh. Not everyone you don't like has borderline personality disorder,
died.
Josh.
I can't remember if she was 11 or 12 years old when he died, but it was young. And that left my grandmother to care for my mother and my mother's younger sister.
I mean,
my grandmother had 9 children who lived.
Hang on. So Lone says it seems like quite a few older movie stars had rocky childhoods. Almost every successful person in the world has a rocky childhood. It's not just movie stars. Have you guys ever heard a successful person say, my childhood was great and there was like nothing wrong and it was great and it was idyllic and my parents were perfect in every way? It doesn't happen. It's kind of like the people who go on to achieve great things, it's because they're usually balancing out the suckiness of their childhood. But the people who have like okay childhoods, what happens after they graduate from high school? They stay in the same town that they grew up in. They get married, they buy a house, they have kids in the same town they grew up in. They never leave. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But there's something that pushes people to be uber successful to balance out how much their childhood sucks. They're like, get me the F away from there. I'm never going back to that. And they leave. And then they go on to, build businesses or become actors or do whatever. But the people who have like okay childhoods usually don't leave the town they grew up in.
I believe that she had 2 stillbirths and several abortions. And they were by 2 different husbands. And her first husband was floridly abusive. And 7 of my mother's siblings come from that marriage. My mother and her younger sister were the only 2 offspring of my grandmother's last marriage. And they lived in poverty, what you might call Appalachia of the North. House had running water, but that's all it had. It had cold running water, no hot water, no bathroom indoors. They had an outhouse. not very much money. And my mother's younger sister, Connie, was born when my grandmother was, again, a heavy drinker the whole time. And my grandmother was 44 or 45 years old when she gave birth to Connie, a few years after she gave birth to my mother. Connie was born in 1969. Connie is deceased. Connie was profoundly mentally retarded. The best guess I could give you was that she may have had the mental ability of a 5-year-old, but it doesn't map directly onto how she was. Her brain was very malformed, and she needed an extraordinary amount of care. Connie did. In those days, it was shameful to have a retarded child. And there was not very much help for parents like my grandparents. They didn't have all the special schools that they have now or the sheltered workshops. And also, my grandparents were fucked up beyond belief and spent the first few years pretending that Connie was normal until they couldn't ignore it anymore. And they were urged to institutionalize her, and they refused to do so. And so they kept her at home. And she acted out. She had temper tantrums, violent temper tantrums. Poor girl. And from what my mother described, almost all of the parental care had to go to Connie. And as a result, my mother was neglected. She told me stories about how when they would have Christmas, there were very few gifts. So each child really only got one special gift. And my mother got a doll for Christmas. And Connie took a liking to this doll and really, really wanted the doll and cried and screamed. And my grandparents took that doll from my mother and gave it to Connie. And would say things like, I'm just going to go ahead and name her. My mother's name is Bonnie. Bonnie, why are you so selfish? Connie doesn't know any better. She'll always be a little girl. She needs that doll more than you. Why don't you give it to her? You can imagine how a child felt to be treated that way by her parents. Not to feel like they loved her as much as they loved the other daughter. Always to be put second. Always to be asked to sacrifice herself for somebody who needed mother and daddy's love more. But it curdled my mother. My mother was intensely jealous and resentful of Connie. She hated her. She absolutely hated her. And for decades would rant and scream about her fucking retarded sister. It was almost as if she took her anger out on Connie herself rather than on her own parents.
No, this may not be directly about me as much as it's about him working out his mommy issues. So here's the deal, guys. If you just joined, Josh Slocum literally put me in the thumbnail on these videos. And this was around a time where Josh Slocum was publicly diagnosing me as having both narcissistic and borderline personality disorder. So I kind of figured he might be alluding to me in these videos. Apparently he's not. He's talking about his mother. We're going to keep watching this because I do actually find it interesting. I think it's you know, I mean, I have questions. I have questions if Josh Slocum is telling the truth. Because I do think that Josh Slocum has a personality disorder of some sort. I'm not going to diagnose him directly. I don't know that for sure. But the thing of it is like people who get obsessed with these things tend to have them. If you see people like running around diagnosing everyone they know as a narcissist, you might be looking at the narcissist. If you see everyone running around diagnosing people with borderline personality disorder or cluster B or any of that, then they might have some experience with that. That's the way it goes. They're projecting their bullshit onto other people. Also, he's directly describing that he has a borderline personality disordered mother, which if he's telling the truth, and he might not be telling the truth, we need to leave space for that. Josh Slocum could be making all of this up. We don't know for sure. But if he is telling the truth, there's not an out of this world possibility that he himself picked that up from his mother. Right? And so, so we're watching it because I'm actually finding it interesting. It's giving me more insight into who he is as a person and why he might be running around the internet, like diagnosing me with a personality disorder that I don't have. We might look around after this at some other videos on his channel. Maybe we'll even watch the interview he did with Carrie. I'm not quite sure yet. But I'm enjoying it for right now. I think, like I said, as many issues as I have with Josh Slocum for publicly defaming me, I don't hate that he's doing this. I think it's important to share human experiences. And if he can help people, then good for him.
I suspect I can't prove this, but I
Yes,
strongly suspect
Vince.
there was sexual
Yes.
abuse in my mother's childhood home as well. And I very strongly suspect that it happened with Connie. My mother told horrific stories of my grandparents apparently claimed that Connie was chronically constipated and would subject her to enemas almost every single day.
What the
Maybe
fuck?
she needed them, maybe she didn't. But according to my mother, she screamed.
This is fucked up.
So
I didn't need to know that.
my mother came from an insane and deranged household. And it shaped how she had children.
Literally.
I want to read you
Literally.
a little bit more from the borderline mother. This applies to all children. But you can easily see how damaging this can be when it goes wrong. So
he is not recovering.
The first thing we must understand in life is our mother.
If Josh Slocum has admitted to having a personality disorder, and it wouldn't surprise me if he had, he is not recovering. He is not in recovery. I'm going to tell you that right now. Not in recovery at all.
Recognizing her face, the sound of her voice, the meaning of her facial expressions, the meaning of her moods is so universal, so natural and normal, and so crucial to survival that we scarcely give it a thought. In fact, we forget how much we know about her despite having powerful reactions to a certain gesture, a tone of voice, a facial expression in someone else. That person, of course, often being our spouse. Understanding our mother is the first step to understanding ourselves. Borderline personality disorder is defined as a, quote, pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affect, and marked impulsivity.
That's why they believe I have it. Because they claim I have, like, unstable interpersonal relationships because I don't want to be friends with them. I don't actually have unstable interpersonal relationships. I just don't want to be friends with people who are friends with them.
End quote. The term borderline means that their emotional state can border between psychosis and neurosis, particularly when faced with abandonment or rejection. Thus, children with borderline mothers grow up in a contradictory and confusing
exactly. I have
world.
boundaries, clear boundaries.
I want to explain neurosis and psychosis to you. The term borderline personality disorder, some clinicians call it a misnomer. They wish that the disorder weren't named that, but it actually speaks to something
no
worth thinking about.
He counseled someone on the internet. He shouldn't be doing that. That is so fucking unethical. I have no words. I have no words for how bad that is. No one should seek counseling from someone who is creating content on the internet. Don't do that.
The borderline between
oh my God. It's called cutting the cord. Are you shitting me? We might have to watch it. I want to. I don't know if I can. Oh God, like it makes me feel sick to even think about watching that. God, that is so fucking irresponsible.
Psychosis and neurosis. And this comes originally out of Freudian thinking. Neurosis describes emotional dysfunctions in people, but that fall within the normal range. People may be more or less neurotic, anxiety ridden, quote, hung up on certain things, likely to repeat the same patterns of bad relationships over and over again. But neurosis is on the less extreme end. So, you know, you can describe people with normal range personalities as being more or less neurotic. Psychosis refers to actually losing touch with reality, being delusional, whether that is actual visual hallucinations or auditory hallucinations or paranoid hallucinations, which is something that comes up a lot in particularly low periods in people with borderline personality disorder. And one way to describe borderline personality disorder is, I can't remember who said this. It's a great description. They're stably unstable, right? They're constantly fluctuating between high neurosis and psychosis. So an example of breaking and losing touch with reality would be a borderline. I've seen this in friends. I've seen it in my mother. If my mother was feeling particularly stressed or anxious about something and really wanted my reassurance or really wanted me to come over to her house and help her write checks for bills or whatever it was, she would text and text and text. And if I couldn't text back immediately, if I couldn't respond to her, she would begin constructing this hallucinatory fantasy that I hated her, that I was deliberately not answering the phone or not answering her texts, that I was talking about her to my sister, that I was making up lies. I mean, it could get really baroque. That's one of the ways that they can go over the border from neurosis into psychosis. Christine Lawson also says, children of borderlines are not only at risk for developing borderline personality disorder, but in some cases, the lives of both mother and child can be endangered. Trust is a major issue between borderlines and their children. Children cannot trust the borderline mother for many reasons. Number one, she is manipulative. Two, she distorts the truth and may even blatantly lie. Three, she may physically harm them. Four, she is unpredictable. Five, she overreacts. Six, she is impulsive. Seven, she has poor judgment. Eight, she has an unreliable memory. 9, she is inconsistent. 10, she is intrusive. Like Alice, who confided in the Cheshire Cat, children of borderlines may learn to trust a pet more than their own mother. The rage, the accusations, and the projection.
Huh. Kind of seems like what Carrie's done to me, doesn't
the
it?
fits that people like Joan Crawford had, that my mother had, that maybe your mother or father had, are reflections of terrors that live inside them, inadequacies that live inside them, fears about their own self-worth or the lack of it. I want to show you another shorter clip from Mommy Dearest. And to set this up, no, I'm not going to set it up. Let's just, Kevin, let's roll the scene from Mommy Dearest with Christina sitting in front of Joan Crawford's dressing table.
Oh, yes. It was thrilling. I'm so grateful to you all. My wonderful fans who've made me a star. Oh, yes. It was thrilling. I'm so grateful to you all. My wonderful fans who have made me a star.
do you think you're doing?
Nothing, Mommy. I was just playing.
What do you mean playing? Calling through my things? Making fun of me?
I wasn't making fun of you. I was just trying to. I was acting. Play acting. Like you're always doing.
Look at yourself.
Ow!
What have you done to you? Tina, what have you put on your head? What have you done to this damn...
Sorry. Ow! It was just setting lotion. Oh, Mom, ow! What are you doing?
Don't you
Oh,
tell
Mommy,
me what
don't.
I'm doing. Don't tell me.
Oh,
Don't.
no! Mommy, I look awful.
Yeah, I know you look awful. You be quiet. You're always rummaging through my drawers, trying to find a way to make people look at you. Why are you always looking at yourself in the mirror? Why are you doing that? Tell me. You sit
She's
still
cutting her
now.
hair off.
This ought to teach you. You're vain.
Mommy, I can't go
spoiled.
to school like this.
I'd rather you go bald to school than looking like a tramp.
No, Mommy, please.
You're
No.
spoiled. Why? You're there.
Please, I cannot go to school like this. Mommy, please.
You
No.
spoiled it. You spoiled it just like I spoiled you.
I want to point out a couple of things in that scene. And I should also say this. Christina Crawford does not like this movie. She didn't approve of it. She didn't like the way it was done. Christina wrote 2 or 3 scripts.
Oh, wow. We're not going to watch that
movie
then.
rights. They didn't accept any of her scripts, the movie rights to her book, Mommy Dearest, which came out in 1977. This movie was made in 1981. And I'm not going to gainsay Christina. This was her mother and this is her story. But she said that her book was about a child trying to get through a war zone with a mother like Joan, but that Paramount had made just another Joan Crawford picture. And there's some truth to that. I mean, the way this movie is shot, if you know any of Joan Crawford's work, you can see sets, you can see lighting choices, you can even see particular behaviors that come straight out of some of Crawford's biggest pot boilers, like Queen Bee.
For real. You're
In a
right about
sense,
that.
This was another Joan Crawford picture. Faye Dunaway, the physical resemblance and the mannerisms is utterly uncanny. Her representation of Joan Crawford certainly looks and sounds the way Crawford did in a lot of her pictures. But whether or not Christina Crawford finds the film portrayal to be accurate to her life, if you dial it down just a little bit, it certainly rings true for a person like my mother and for some other people I've known who've had mothers like mine. Yes, there really are parents like this. There really are. But what she says in this scene, you can hear Joan Crawford talking about her own inner demons. Why are you always looking at yourself in the mirror? Why are you doing that? You vain, spoiled, selfish child.
It's like you're constantly projecting. Exactly right, Josh.
I'd rather you go to school bald than looking like a tramp. She's talking about herself. She's talking about her own insecurities. She's talking about the fact that she feels like a tramp. She feels cheap, shallow, vain, and she doesn't want to face these things about herself. So she takes them out on Christina. And this is what borderline mothers do. they project the demon inside of themselves onto their children. When my mother would
Oh,
go on one of her tears, and she would
We're
often
ending.
say, "Why are you doing this to me?" In the middle of slapping me or terrorizing me, she'd take me by the shoulders and shake me and look in my face and say, "Why are you doing this to me?" Not cleaning the dishes properly was doing something to her. Not folding my clothes properly was doing something to her. I'm not exactly sure what demon she was trying to exorcise, but she was certainly projecting her inner state onto her children.
Perhaps you should reflect on that, Josh. A little reflection would do you good.
This is a very heavy episode, and I think we're going to end the first half here. This is a lot to take, a lot to think about, and I think it's better broken up into two. But I want to say thank you for joining me for this episode of Disaffected. We're going to pick this up in the next episode next week, and we're going to use another not funny film that's very funny and also very illustrative. We're going to talk about Carrie. See you next time.
All right. Well, that was the first one, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I really thought there were going to be more like remarks directed towards me again, just because I am actually in the fucking thumbnail. He can deny it all he wants, but I think we all know because we've been following the saga for a while. Now, here's what I want to ask you guys. I would like to watch a little bit more Josh Slocum. I would. I am ambivalent about whether or not we continue into, because look at that. Come on, that's fucking me. You're gonna tell me that's not me? That's me. Especially when you look at it in conjunction with the fact that he talked to Carrie about her abusive mother, and Carrie wrote an essay about me being her abusive mother at around exactly the same time period. That's absolutely me. I'm sorry. So I want to ask you in the chat what your opinion is on where we should go from here. Should we continue to watch the second episode in this series, or should we try to watch something else? I am oddly open to watching the interview with Carrie. I don't really want to, but like I'm oddly open to it. So people are saying we should watch something else. All right, well, let's look around. Oh, this is Josh talking about, oh, we should watch this. We should watch this. How do you guys feel about this? Apparently, Josh did an episode called Don't Diagnose, the absurd social media demand aimed at protecting abusers from detection and exposure. This is Josh complaining about the fact that people that have actually been trained in psychology say you really shouldn't publicly diagnose people on the internet. And he's like, why can't I publicly diagnose people on the internet? So that's what that's going to be about. No, he is a funeral director. He is not a psychologist in any way. He is a funeral director. Or I think he lost his job. I don't know what the fuck he's doing now, but he was a former funeral director. Let's see. I know one. Oh, unmasking covert narcissism. That could be an episode. So I want to show you guys. There is one. This episode, this is the one where Josh does actually allude to me in this episode. I've heard about that. That's 2 hours long. We're not going to watch that. Let's watch Don't Diagnose. Let's watch this. Let's see what he has to say here.
Welcome to the Disaffected Podcast. I'm Joshua Slocum. Today we're going to talk about the don't diagnose phenomenon. Have you ever noticed online that when somebody describes problematic behavior or even abusive behavior from someone else, that if they offer the opinion that that person might have some personality pathology or a disorder, that you get this objection, don't diagnose? Are you a doctor? Where did you get your medical degree? We're going to talk about the don't diagnose phenomenon and what it's really about. We're also going to talk about something
this
very
audio
important
only?
that I call
Oh, fuck,
the
this is audio
wounded
only.
bird camouflage.
Shit.
And these are people who
I'm pretty sure he is actually referencing me in this one, but it's audio only, and I don't want to watch audio only. God damn it. God damn it. That might be one that we have to do later. Okay, well, let's see. Let's watch a good one about narcissism. Oh, fuck it. Let's watch the interview with Carrie. We're going to do it.
Don't leave me.
Fuck it. We're going to do it.
I need you.
This week on Disaffected, excess charity and willful blindness strike again. We'll talk about a Milwaukee family court judge that just got busted for kiddie porn. Guess what? He was the director of the city's Drag Queen Story Hour, an educational program for children. Then we're going to introduce you to Carrie Smith, co-host of the podcast Unsafe Space.
Not anymore.
Like me, Carrie is a survivor of an abusive, borderline mother, and she woke up to the personality disordered nature of the social justice cult she's now escaped after decades inside. This is the first time Carrie has talked about her experience publicly, and this is an interview that you won't want to miss. Coming up this week.
Again, Carrie directly referenced me in relation to her mother. This is not theoretical. Carrie Smith thinks I'm the same person as her mother. All right, let's fast forward and get to Carrie. Oh, there she is. Carrie's going to be tweeting right now, Carlin made another video all about me. I'll tell you exactly what happened with Unsafe Space. Carter fired Carrie, and then Carrie's mob went after Carter quite a bit, and then Carrie was sent a cease and desist letter from Carter because Carrie was defaming Carter all over the internet and spreading lies about him, and Carter publicly sent her a cease and desist letter to tell her to cut the shit. And then because Carrie created such backlash for Carter, Carter ultimately decided to take Unsafe Space in more of a writing direction. So now he's changed the website where it's going to be more focused on like written articles and that sort of thing. And I think, you know what? Best of luck to Carter. Honestly, best of luck to him. But that's basically like what happened. And that's all public, by the way. I didn't give away any secrets. I'm not telling tales out of school. All of that is public information.
So much for listening. Would you take just a minute right now and share our
No.
we live in?
No.
We have our first guest on the show. Joining us right now is Carrie Smith. Carrie is
Did she say something about losing her company? It wasn't her company. It was never her company. Did she seriously say that? That is completely untrue. Carrie owned 10% of the company. Carter owned the other 90% of the company. Carrie was fired because she was insane. And then she apparently, and this is according to the cease and desist letter that Carter sent her, which you can still find at unsafespace.com/defamation. Apparently, Carrie actually broke her contract with Carter. So I don't know. So I think that she forfeited the percent of the company that she owns. But no one stole Carrie's company from her. That didn't happen. Because it was always Carter's company. It was 100% always Carter's company.
Well, a little bit north of Austin, Texas, I think. And Carrie is co-host of a podcast called Unsafe Space
Not
that she
anymore.
does with Carter Laren. And I started listening to them maybe about 3 months ago. I heard Carrie actually on one of my favorite podcasts called Trigonometry. And that's what turned me onto their show. So I started listening to Carter and Carrie, and my ears pricked up a few weeks ago when I heard Carrie talking about the fact that she had some personal family experience with somebody with borderline personality disorder. And I always am sort of attuned to that. But the fact that Carrie also has a long history of being in the social justice activism world the way I did, perhaps even longer. And I thought, this is somebody who might know some of the things I'm talking about. So, Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks so much for having me. Your show has become my latest obsession because nobody is. Yeah, I listen to obviously a lot of content that gets into social justice ideology, my old belief system. I love trigonometry also. I do quite a few interviews with people about it, but nobody's doing a show like yours. Nobody's doing a show that's looking at social justice issues through the lens of Cluster B. So I'm really excited about your podcast. And I'm
she's like
happy that
Chrissy
you
Mayer's
invited
best
me on.
friend. Carrie's getting a push-up bra and everything. She's Chrissy Mayer's
Thanks.
best
We were
friend.
talking sort of offline a couple of days ago, and we have some other similarities. One of the things that I like to do at the end of the day that I find really relaxing after I've done my housework and gotten into my pajamas, I like to sit down and watch plane crash documentaries because I actually find that chills me out. And then
That's weird.
And I heard that you like to watch documentaries about cults and sociopaths in order to sort of relax into your evening jam.
That's kind of it's similar. We have different lately for me it's called documentaries. Sometimes it's about serial killers and sociopaths, and there was a time when I was really into horror movies. I'm not as much into those now, but these things that we watch to unwind, which could be considered pretty dark in some ways, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but it feels like home, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little. Is that what's going on?
I think so. Yeah, I do. So, tell people, if you please, give us a little synopsis of your background. I tried to give one, but you know yourself better than I do. So I guess I would ask you, who are you? Where do you come from? And how did you get to doing what you're doing in your work life now and in your podcasting life?
Sure. I am co-host of Unsafe Space, as you mentioned. We've
Not
been doing the show
anymore.
for a little over a couple years now, I think. And I started doing it with my friend Carter Laren because I had recently left what I call the cult of social justice. I had been in that cult of belief for over 2 decades, for about 20 years. And my process of leaving it was slow and drawn out, much like the process of getting into it, I think tends to be a gradual one. And I'd started talking more about it and criticizing it online a little more. And in the course of doing that, I lost a lot of friends. Of course, I lost a lot of people in that social justice belief system. But then I also had people like Carter, people I knew who had previously only been acquaintances, reach out and want to find out what was going on with me, who were interested in what I was saying and agreed with some of it. And Carter was one of those people, and he's since become one of my best friends. And we started doing the show
Not
together.
anymore.
One of the series we started is called Deprogrammed, and Deprogrammed is specifically focused around.
Thank you for coming, Crystal.
It's a deep dive into social justice ideology. We do a lot of interviews in that series. So we've interviewed
Mailman
Brett Weinstein. Oh, I'm sorry about the dogs. Should I pause?
No,
Okay.
it's fine. That's
Okay.
This is Tiger, right?
Yeah, but there's 3 other dogs here today. There happens to be a person walking by with a dog, so they should stop in a second. They're just letting me know that I should be on the lookout. Okay, I think we're good, hopefully.
No.
So where was I? So Deprogrammed is more of a deep dive into social justice ideology. And we do a lot of long form interviews in that series. We've been able to interview Brett Weinstein, James Lindsay, Helen Pluckrose, and we've actually started talking a lot more about social justice in our other show as well, which is maybe the one you've seen, the Covfefe Break, which is our live show on Monday and Friday. That show is meant to be more of just a discussion of culture.
That we can agree on.
It's just that social justice ideology kind of went mainstream last year.
So you have good observations. You're just kind of a tool sometimes, no loss.
Well.
I mean, it is there anything that it hasn't seeped into, right?
Right.
And I wonder if it's more interesting to talk about how you got into it or how you got out of it. And I'll throw a few things out there, and you can sort of take these and respond to them in the way you think is right. But I notice, this show is mainly about cluster B personality disorders, the kinds of character traits and character disorders that make up the psychological makeup of abusive parents, abusive spouses, manipulative bosses, narcissistic and grasping politicians. And for me, I noticed a connection between the fact that when I was in the social justice world, when I was part of what was called the New Atheist community, before that, when I was much younger, I was very active in the gay rights movement, which had a social justice component. But I think that back then, during the late 80s and early 90s, we were much more focused on actual tangible legal harms. We were asking for things that were reasonable, actual equal rights under the law. And we're in a different world now. And what's called social justice
He's
these
not wrong
days,
about that.
looks a lot more to me like collective narcissism.
And I want to say that too, because ironically enough, Josh and I grew up not that far away from each other. We both grew up in Vermont. And so in Vermont, during the 90s, so that was actually when I got involved in politics, and it was because in Vermont in the mid to late 90s, there was a push for civil unions, which was like a precursor to gay marriage. And it ultimately ended up passing in Vermont. I think I was a freshman in high school, or excuse me, I was a freshman in college, so that would have been 1999. When they ultimately passed it. And that was actually my first adventure into politics. And so he's not wrong about that. Like the LGBTQ activism, and there wasn't even a Q back then. It was gay rights. There wasn't even a T back then. But the gay rights stuff in the 90s, it was more about let's have gay marriage. Let gay couples be able to adopt kids and things like that. It was treat gay people like normal human beings and give them access to everything that straight people have. That's what it was. So it wasn't as culty and weird as it is now.
A cult of narcissism. And when I had my awakening, as I call it, to what personality disorders were, when that finally explained why my deranged mother was as abusive as she was, I found myself at the same time seeing that behavior and seeing those character traits in my friends and my compatriots, if you will. Was it like that for you, or was it different?
It was like that for me. And you and I talked about this a little bit offline. A lot of times when I do interviews, people will want to ask me about, what woke you up? What helped you get out of this particular ideology that you've been entrenched in for so long? And there's a lot of different conversations you can have there. And usually we talk about the actual things that penetrated my worldview. And one of those was going down a rabbit hole of watching videos online of Trump supporters being physically attacked by people who were supposedly on my side. And that was really emotional for me to watch those videos. And that was one of the first things that made me question if the narrative I believed in was true, because the narrative I believed in was that Trump supporters were the violent people. And so that's usually the conversation that I have, or that people want to talk about. Sometimes people.
Let me ask you, how about what got you into it?
Oh, okay. That's also, I think you could have several conversations about what got me into it and what got me out of it. Because let me just finish this thought before I lose this one, if you don't mind. One of the other conversations I've had about getting out of it has been, and I've only had this one maybe once with Benjamin Boyce, and that was more about, God, finding God and becoming a Christian roughly around the same time that I started questioning this ideology. And so I've had that conversation before.
Wait.
I've never had the conversation with someone in an interview.
Carrie became a Christian way earlier than I thought she did then. That explains a lot. That explains so fucking much. I thought Carrie left social justice way before she became a Christian. I thought it was Carrie left social justice, and then she took a really long break from being involved in culty things. Like I just didn't think Carrie was involved in anything. And then I thought she became a Christian like years after she left social justice. But no, now we've discovered that's not true. What happened is Carrie left one cult and jumped into another cult. And I'm not calling Christianity a cult. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Christianity is a cult. But Carrie is specifically in a church where they will kick people out if they live in unrepentant sin. Like, she's in a very, very culty church. It's not about Christianity, it's about the church specifically that she's in. So she literally left one cult and went to another cult. This explains so much. I should have watched this years ago.
Interview about cluster B personality disorders and having an awakening to what those are. So that's sort of, I'm excited about having that with you. I'm a little nervous about it, I'll be honest, but I'm happy to talk about it. And then, yeah, so getting into it, I would say it's the same thing. There's 3 different conversations you could have. And one of those probably, if we're going to talk about the cluster B thing, probably has to be that I grew up in a chaotic home. I grew up in a home that led me to distrust authority and tradition, I guess. And I also I was raised in a Southern Baptist home, and I left that belief system. And I think that social justice ideology.
Carrie is allowed to live in unrepentant sin. Her church makes an exception for her.
I know you're an atheist, but I think you'll let me talk about what I consider to be the God hole, the place where God should go or could go, is people will put other things in that place, things that they worship instead. And this definitely functioned as a religion for me. It filled that vacuum, and it gave me like a blueprint for how to be a good person in the world, and how to go out and try to, you're trying to make the world a better place. You're trying to end racism and sexism. You're on the side of the good people. Here are some rules to follow. And then those rules, they keep evolving and they keep adding new ones, and they keep getting you to buy into more of it. So it definitely did that. It did that for me. I'm not sure do you have a specific question about cluster B and getting into it? Because I'm probably searching around here.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways to get into it. I'll throw out what I think my connection was, and you can just riff off that. You may say, "Hey, yeah, it was the same for me," or "No, it wasn't, and it was like this." Okay. I have a suspicion that for people like us, as people who watch my show know, my mother has borderline and narcissistic personality disorders, and we'll get into your assessment of cluster B in your family. I always felt, from a very young age, I always had a strong sense of the requirement for justice, right? Yeah.
True.
One of the things I was very reactive to, and I'm still very reactive to, is the concept
Carrie's
of
like, it's a helpful guideline.
I think I grew up in a household where unfairness and injustice in the home was one of the overriding things that made it the home we lived in. The unfairness, the emotional expectations, the chaotic, ever-changing rules from my mercurial mother. And I suspect that for me, social justice and political activism on behalf of groups of people who either were oppressed or who I perceived to be oppressed seemed like a natural place for my own psychology to go. What about you?
I think you're right. Unfairness, some things being unjust, it's definitely a soft spot for me. And if I feel that if I think someone's being treated unfairly, especially if it's a friend or someone I love, I have that characteristic of sometimes rushing in impulsively, even to try and defend them. And so I do think social justice appealed to me because it was, here, you need to fight on behalf of the oppressed and the underdog. Here's an ideology that has justice in the name. And it's about fighting for those who society is treating unfairly. And it sells itself that way very, very successfully. So I would agree with you about that.
So tell me about home.
Yeah.
I know this is the first time you're having this conversation, and you can have it any way you want to have it. But
Yeah.
what's Cluster B in Carrie Smith's home like, or what was it like?
So my mother, and I haven't talked about this, and you're right, whenever it comes up on the show, I've always tended just to say, if we do talk about it was someone in my family, I think has BPD, and not really go into specifics. And I do have a lot of trepidation about being more specific, but I also think it's important. I like what you're doing with the show about just being honest about these kind of personality disorders and how they affect people. And I do think a lot of us have interacted with someone who has one of these personality disorders. Anyway, my mother is someone who, what I most often describe if I'm talking to someone in my life and trying to explain it, I'll just say she was physically and emotionally abusive. I usually don't get more specific than that unless it's someone like you who knows about borderline and knows about some of the cluster B disorders. But our life was, we grew up in a middle-class home. We had parents with, who went to college and had good jobs, and they definitely provided us with a lot of privileges in terms of access to things that you can have in a middle class home. I had good education. Not at the school I went to originally, but I ended up getting into a science and math high school, a boarding high school that's state funded, and you go and live there. And I took the first opportunity I could to get out of the house. So I moved out of the house at 15 to go to that school. And they definitely provided for me to go to an expensive college, took out a lot of student loans as well, but they shouldered a lot of the burden for me to be there. And so they provided in a lot of those ways. And yet, when we were kids, my brother and sister and I often couldn't figure out what was wrong with our family. And we're all families like this because we had a outward-facing public persona, and the image that my mom tried to cultivate of what we were, and that we all knew there were rules about what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say to other people. There's even rules about, I'm sure you know this, about having people over because you can't excuse me, you can't do or say anything to challenge that perception that is being put out there. Facebook these days, for my mom, I think functions a lot like church functioned when we were kids. It's like the outward perception.
Okay, so I want to say this. Carrie is obviously clearly traumatized by this situation. And again, and I've said this every single time that I've talked about this, I do have great sympathy for what she endured as a child. I really do. I'm not trying to make light of it. My issue is that Carrie has publicly written an essay calling me her abusive mother, saying I have the same disorder that her mother has, trying to insinuate that I do the same things in my home that her mother did to her, trying to insinuate that I abuse people. Like, she has gone on Carrie has sent hundreds of tweets about me saying this, not one or two, hundreds over the course of the last 2 years. And so while I am very sympathetic, and she's obviously traumatized, and she obviously needs to go to therapy, and she obviously this is still very real for her, I really, really, really I understand it. I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's not acceptable to put your mommy issues onto a stranger on the internet. It is not acceptable. And the fact that Carrie is saying that I'm like her mother, it's honestly, I'm sorry, it's really fucking offensive. I've had less than 5 conversations with this woman in my entire life. And so I appreciate that she's traumatized. I appreciate that horrible things happen to her. I don't want to downplay any of it, but Carrie needs to go to therapy.
Of the perfect family.
Yeah. The mask.
Yeah.
The mask of the narcissist.
Yeah, but yeah, so our home life was very chaotic, and that was because our mother was emotionally and physically abusive and emotionally chaotic herself, and it was hard to understand, is what's happening to us abuse or not, even when something that you were, if I were to describe it to someone who wasn't abused, they would say, yes, that's absolutely abuse. Being hit with belts, the buckle into the belt, even with toilet plungers, metal bars, coat hangers, whatever was around. It was like, here's an implement, right? And then the psychological and emotional abuse was worse than that in a lot of ways, because it was coming from a parent.
You're probably right about that, Tinge.
You're on
somebody
the one hand,
somebody who says they love you, and somebody that you have to believe loves you, your mother.
yes, although I don't recall her saying that, but
Oh, are you saying that your mother was not somebody who said I love you?
no. Of course you believe that your parents do, but I don't recall that being said. And anyway, a lot of times when we saw abused children in pop culture, like in movies or in books, the abuse would be, from it would be a poor family, there'd be alcoholism problems or something. There would be, it didn't fit with the rest of our life. My mom didn't have any substance abuse problems. Our family wasn't poor, and so sometimes we would even ask my siblings, are we being abused? Like that sort of, I don't really know. And you're not really sure what to believe and who to believe. And so anyway,
It'll be tweeted before this stream is even over.
Dealt with it all in our own ways and developed our own coping mechanisms, and got out of the house as soon as we could. And in adulthood, I started to think that she had some form of narcissism. And even as a kid, we would try to figure out what it was. I mean, I remember going to the library and checking out books of maybe it's borderline, trying to, not borderline, sorry, maybe it's bipolar. Which was a word I had heard as a kid. But it wasn't until I was an adult in my 30s and I was home visiting, and I had just had one of these just chaotic encounters with my mom. And at that time, I thought it was enough just to not fight back with her. And so I was still making mistakes that I later learned were mistakes, like sticking around when the hurricane started instead of leaving. And anyway, I went out to lunch with a friend of mine who I'd grown up with, and who's now had just become at the time a therapist. And that friend, we were discussing it, and she said, "You know what? Your
He
mom
probably is,
borderline."
which is really
and I'd never heard that
irresponsible.
word before. And then she shared with me some of her memories of my mother from when we were kids, some of her own memories, and just how terrified she was being in the car with my mom on a particular trip, and how everyone was
What happened
terrified.
during
And
that
she
trip?
What'd you say?
What happened? Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are there any anecdotes that you remember that you're willing to talk about? And I'm not asking that specifically to put you on the spot, and I'm not asking that in a lurid way.
Right.
I'm asking it because my approach to this has been, I found that actually telling the stories of what happened, the words that were said, or what set the temper tantrum off, what the reaction was, that actually narrating those for people has a way of, I mean, every time I've done so, I hear from people who say, "Oh my God, I thought I was the only one who had a father who did that."
Right.
Or that sounds like something my mother would say almost verbatim. I'm wondering if you could give an example of one of those hurricanes, right? Like what it was about,
Yeah.
what was said, what was going on.
Yes. So they most often started between her and my father, but sometimes they would start between her and one of us. And it could be anything. It could be the most innocuous thing. Recently as an adult, here's just a silly example. If you're sitting at the table and you compliment, if my dad made the beans and you're like, oh, the beans are really good, Dad. And she's like, oh, the beans are really good, Dad. Like this kind of just wickedness and this mocking language that is meant to tell you did something wrong by complimenting him and not her. Yeah. And sometimes those things would just then escalate because someone would push back. And there were a lot of fights between her and my dad that started over nothing, innocuous things, and then escalated into screaming matches where, her favorite word for him was shit ass. You fucking shit ass and this, and I hate you. But loud screaming. It's hard to explain what that just chaotic fighting is like. And sometimes he would fight back, and then it would get physical from time to time. She would throw things at him, glass bottles of juice. She would hit him. Once she cut him with a pair of scissors. I found him in the living room when I woke up one night, and he was in the living room crying, and his hand was bleeding.
So I want to tell you what's going through my head right now. And again, this is awful. I didn't have this type of childhood. The abuse that happened in my childhood was much more emotional abuse. It wasn't. There were occasions where there were physical things involved, but it really wasn't like it was every once in a while. It wasn't even like maybe like once a year, maybe. So it wasn't like the most top of mind thing. The worst part of my childhood was the emotional abuse. And I'm not going to go into any more details right this second because again, I've worked through my feelings with my parents. I don't think it was. I think that hurt people, and I don't really care to relive a lot of it, to be honest. But I'll say this: it's like what's really bothering me listening to this is that this is selfish. I understand that, but Carrie has told a lot of people that I treat my husband in the same way that her mother treated her and her father. Carrie and Josh Slocum have been two of the primary people that have spread a lie around the internet saying that I treat my husband like this, and that is not true. And so actually hearing Carrie describe this, what happened with her mother, I'm going like, what the actual fuck? It is a really fucked up thing to do. To spread lies around the internet saying that this is the type of thing that someone that you don't know is doing in their home because you don't like their tone on the internet. It is so fucked up. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about right now.
And she had stabbed him with the scissors. She sometimes if the fights escalated, she would drag us kids into it. We would be sleeping sometimes and you would wake up with a bang, bang, bang on the door, or she would just bust through the door and wake you up and pull you out of bed and, Carrie, your dad is this, in the middle of the night, dragging your siblings into it. She would try to turn us on each other. Like she would accuse my dad of not being man enough to spank us. She would tell him to get up from the table and take his belt off and whip us.
Would he do it?
Yes, sometimes he did. And a lot of times, sometimes he would stand up to her and sometimes he wouldn't. And if he didn't stand up to her, if he did stand up to her, it was worse. She called the cops on him and had him thrown into jail overnight because they're more inclined to believe that it's the man who's abusing the woman. She kept a file of pictures of bruises and things that she could use against him if he ever tried to file for divorce. And some of these were photos of just bruises she got by bumping her leg. I mean, they weren't all as a result of fights with him. It's just if she got a bruise, there's an opportunity to take a picture of it. There was one time that I told a teacher, I had a 7th grade teacher who asked me about bruises on my legs. And I told her, scared to death, but I told her about my mom, and I didn't hear anything about it for a couple days. And then my mother waited. She apparently called my mom. My mom was a teacher too, and at a different school, but she knew she was a teacher, and she called my mother anyway. My mother saved that knowledge until it was most hurtful to reveal it, and in some type of argument was like, even, I won't say that teacher's name, let's say Miss Jones, even Miss Jones doesn't believe you. And it was like, oh, that's how I found out that the teacher went to my mom. So then I never told anyone.
It's so wicked.
She wrote it in her essay about me. That's how you've heard it before. She wrote this in the essay about me.
And I told a youth pastor. And that was a big mistake, because the youth pastor told the pastor, who then brought us in for family counseling. And my mom was so livid, and just sitting in that counseling session with the whole family and with the preacher was the most excruciating thing. It's like I think he was terrified of her. I'm like, what have you done?
I have reached out to Carrie's pastor multiple times, begging him for help to intervene with the smear campaign that Carrie has levied against me, because it's gotten so bad. It's gotten so abusive. They've doxed my friends. They've tried to convince my husband to divorce me. I'm afraid they're going to swap my house. I've had to file police reports. Like, it's really bad. This is not high school drama. It's really fucking bad. But I say this because I've actually reached out to Carrie's pastor on multiple occasions saying, please help. Please intervene. She won't listen. She won't fucking stop. She won't leave me alone. I think that Carrie's pastor is afraid of her. Either Carrie's pastor is just one of the biggest frauds in the history of all Christianity, which I'm not dismissing, but I actually think that the reason that Carrie's pastor refuses to intervene to do probably what Jesus would advise him to do is because he's afraid of Carrie. That's my theory on it. I think that he knows that if he said anything that was against what Carrie wants him to say and do, then he will experience exactly the same type of retribution that I experienced, exactly the same type of retribution that Carter Laren has experienced after he fired Carrie's ass from Unsafe Space. And Carrie has been very public with her pastor on the internet. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that if Carrie's pastor intervened, that she would defame him, she'd smear him all over the internet, she'd throw him under the bus in exactly the same way that she does everyone else that tries to intervene in these types of situations. I absolutely believe that.
The betrayal to get that required, to get the family to have to come to the preacher and sit down. We never went back to that church again. That's when we quit going to church as a family.
Of course.
And over the years, we had occasionally friends, like the friend who ended up being a therapist and gave me the word borderline. She said the first night that her mom met my mother was at a band thing. We were in the band together, and that her mom came home and said, "There's something wrong with that woman." Like some parents could see it, and then there were some parents who stopped letting their kids come to our house on the occasions we were allowed to have friends over. Something sometimes would happen. The longer that people were around her, the harder it was for her to keep the mask on. So,
God.
That didn't come off. And then
I have multiple tweets. If you go to survivingcarriesmith.substack.com, where I document all of the bullshit that Carrie Smith has put me through, there are multiple tweets where Carrie's like, Carlin's mask is going to come off any moment. Carlin's mask is about to fall off. Carrie has predicted that my mask is going to fall off since December of 2020. I'm sure it's going to happen anytime now. It's been 2 years. My mask has almost been falling off for 2 years, according to her.
Those people weren't allowed over anymore because they had seen it. And anyway, another thing she liked to do is she vacillated between moods very quickly, like you said, these different states of emotion, and it's like 0 to 60
right away.
Yeah, so there would be
right away.
It would be just seething rage and
yes, I must have used Gorilla Glue on my mask,
out, attacking us physically, and then she would switch to despondent sobbing and weeping in her bedroom about how she's going to kill herself and nobody loves her and nobody values her, and we would have to go in. A lot of times our dad would send us in. He would say, one of you, Carrie, you go in, or one of my, you go in and talk to her. And it got to the point where the suicide threats were so over the top and happen so often, and you just kind of become inured to them. And I remember there was one Christmas where she was out on the diving board. We had a in-ground pool and it was frozen over and covered, but she was out on the diving board in her pajamas, like not wearing enough. It was very cold out there. She was in her pajamas and she was on the diving board crying and wailing and pitching a fit, laying on the diving board about how she was going to jump into the freezing pool and kill herself. And we're just standing, because it was always worse at the holidays, at Christmas, stuff like that. It would really get ratcheted up. And we're just standing.
I'm laughing.
I know, but see, you can laugh at stuff like this. This is some people, when I tell these stories, they don't have the sense of humor about it. And I really love it.
It's just so ridiculous.
We were just standing in the kitchen looking at it, and I remember we were all kind of looking at each other like, okay, who's going to go out and talk to her? Like, it's just sort of like...
What was it? Was she going to kill herself because what was it about getting in the pool that was going to kill her?
I don't know. They didn't have to make sense, We had, she's pulled a gun on my dad before, and I pulled a gun on my dad once, which is, behavior I saw modeled by her. And
yep.
I have never pulled a gun on a family member. Just for the record, I've never pulled a gun on a family member. I've never physically attacked a family member. You want to know why, Carrie? Because I went to fucking therapy. Did you know? Okay, so chapter 8 of Surviving Carrie Smith, which is survivingcarriesmith.substack.com. Chapter 8 of that website is all about how Carrie spread this lie around the internet and actually tried to get me deplatformed from locals, because Carrie emailed locals and told locals that I was using their platform to create a hunting posse with which I was going to hunt Carrie. And I one day got a phone call from Dave fucking Rubin saying, Carlin, are you planning violence on my platform? And I said, no, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But Carrie actually tried to get me deplatformed because she lied to locals, saying that I was using their platform to form a hunting posse. And she also tweeted out that I was actively forming a hunting posse in my community, and that I was Charles Manson with a YouTube channel. I have that all documented in chapter 8 of chapter 7. Sorry, chapter 7. Chapter 8 is about how Carrie defamed Carter. Chapter 7 is Carrie saying that I'm literally forming a posse to hunt her. So I find it a little ironic that Carrie, as it turns out, Carrie is the one who pulled the gun on her own father. I find that a little ironic. I've never pulled a gun on anyone. That's never happened in my life. So why am I getting accused publicly of forming a hunting posse, Carrie?
We just had a lot of issues coming out of that household. So
Things were a little bit rocky.
Yeah, trying to go back to vague language now. Yeah, so
I want to draw a couple connections. Go ahead, finish.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I just want to and for those of you who are watching who maybe haven't don't
Yes,
have not
she
had
lied
this
to
experience, and I
locals
hope
to
that
try to
that's
get me
most of you, but
deplatformed. She
I
did.
also know that a lot of people watching this show who are going to be attracted to a show like this are sadly going to have experiences like you and I have had, Carrie. And I want to say thank you for being willing to talk about this with me, especially because I know that this is the first time that you've talked about it in any detail, and I know the kind of risk that it feels like you're taking, and I'm honored that you would do it with me. We don't even know each other, but there is something that children of borderline mothers and cluster B parents generally, we tend, I think we sniff each other out. It's almost subconscious. Sometimes it's on a level of intuition, but I had that feeling about you when I started listening to your show. It was no surprise to me when I heard you say that somebody in my family has borderline personality disorder. And I pretty much figured it would be your mother, and it was. But I want to point out for people who are watching and listening a few things that Carrie said, and weave a few threads together for you. The turning on a dime, the emotional turning on a dime is very is really classic to borderline personality disorder. And this is as is the idea that, well, maybe she has bipolar, which you mentioned, Carrie.
I just want to stop and say that I really love that my chat has so embraced the no whining in the chat rule. I love that you guys know the rules. I love that you guys make sure you talk about the rules. I love that you guys share the rules with others. I feel like I have found my people when you understand there are 2 rules in my chat. Don't be a dick, no whining. And I really appreciate that you guys have embraced the no whining rule.
Most of the time anymore, when I hear somebody say that somebody has bipolar, I provisionally assume, I'm willing to be wrong, and I have been wrong, but I'm usually right about this. I provisionally assume that person does not have bipolar disorder, which is what we call manic depression, same thing, but they have borderline personality disorder. Why do I assume that? Because people have people are
So Josh, you assume that if someone says that person has bipolar, you assume that person instead has borderline personality disorder? No. That is not a fair assumption to make.
miseducated about what these disorders are. They are not at all in the same family. Bipolar or manic depression, generally speaking, and there are exceptions to this. So yes, viewers, I do understand that there's something called rapid cycling bipolar. But generally speaking, the depressive, despairing episodes and the manic highs tend to happen over the course of a couple weeks. And then there's a change that lasts another couple of weeks. And then there's a change back. The flipping happens over the period of days or weeks. With a borderline, it can happen literally within seconds. Like what Carrie said, my mother has done the same thing, screaming almost demonic rage, spit flying out of her mouth. And 2 minutes later, she could be sitting on the floor with her head in her hands, crying so hard that she can't get her breath and saying, I have nothing to live for. Yeah. And sometimes
I have never done that. One of the reasons these people diagnose me with like cluster B personality disorders is because they don't like that sometimes I yell on the internet. Yes, I'm a fiery person. I'm an Aries, Sun, Leo, Moon. I am with Pluto in the first fucking house. I'm going to yell on the internet. But you know what I don't do after I yell on the internet? I don't go cower in a corner and put my face in my hands and cry and say I have nothing else. That has literally never happened. Just because someone has a tone you don't like or may raise their voice in a manner that you do not appreciate does not mean they have a personality disorder. There are plenty of reasons why someone might speak in a tone that you don't appreciate or raise their voice that has nothing to do with them having a personality disorder. If you start seeing personality disorders in everything, then perhaps you should go to a therapist and talk to them about if you yourself have a personality disorder.
That would then turn into hysterical laughter as if this were all funny. And Carrie, you and I talked the other day about the fact that both of us as children read
I have
Christina
zero Earth in
Crawford's
my
book,
chart.
Mommy Dearest. You sent me a paperback. You sent me
Hang on. Fun fact. The very first meeting I ever had with Joshua, one of the very first things Joshua said to me, Dragon Water, was, "You have zero Earth in your chart." So sure, we can trade some fire for Earth.
me a photograph of a war-torn paperback.
Yes.
And I want to connect for people what Carrie just described of her mother banging on the door of the bedroom in the middle of the night and pulling the children out. My mother did this too. In my case, it was usually, of course, it had nothing to do with what she actually claimed. These were demons that lived inside my mother that had nothing to do with her. But for me, it was usually I had not completed a chore correctly. I'd left
Yeah.
spots on the dishes, or I vacuumed the floor wrong. And vacuuming the floor wrong could sometimes mean that I did not pull the vacuum cleaner in straight lines so that the nap of the carpet was messy instead of smooth. I mean, this kind of stuff could send my mother into a rage. Christina Crawford called these night raids. And I like that term, and I've adopted it myself. These are night raids. And the terror of being pulled out of your bedroom in the middle of the night. I don't know about you, Carrie, but I mean, I had insomnia for years and couldn't tolerate the sound of, even when I was, as an adult, when I was living with other people.
You know when I had insomnia, Josh? Do you know when I had insomnia? After I got kicked out of that hotel and put on a dark road in the middle of the night when I was like on sleeping medicine, NyQuil, not Ambien, and I was so tired because I've been traveling all day, and then that hotel kicked me out of the hotel in the middle of the fucking night and made me go stand on a dark road by myself with no street light when I was on sleeping medication and could barely stand. That, like, after that happened, which is, I'm bringing this up because this is an incident that Carrie has made fun of over and over and over again. Carrie has spread the lie around the internet that I made all of this up when I did not make it up. After that, I found it impossible, fucking impossible, to sleep in a hotel. And I was traveling every single weekend for 6 months, traveling around the country to do rallies to try to get people to vote for Trump in 2020. And it was almost impossible for me to sleep in a hotel. It was almost impossible. This is probably not something I should admit on the internet, but whatever. Like, I started taking like weed gummies with me, like indica gummies, because indica gummies or like stuff with like indica and melatonin was the only way I could fucking fall asleep at night when I was in a hotel, because that's how bad it was. And this is something that Carrie has used as a weapon against me for 2 fucking years. So I do know about insomnia, not because my parents ever pulled me out of bed in the middle of the night, because that didn't happen to me, but because I know what it's like to be so fucking traumatized by something that you can't sleep, and then to have Carrie Smith make that a punchline of a joke on the internet for 2 straight years and get hit pieces planted in the media on me about that. Fuck off, Carrie. I'm starting to have less and less sympathy as I'm listening to this, because I'm just equating everything that these two are talking about with things that they've done to me, or things that Carrie specifically has done to me.
Of my choice, I would have almost a panic reaction if I were falling asleep and I could hear footsteps coming up the hallway.
Yeah.
Did you anticipate this? I mean, were they out of the blue? I suspect you know what that feels like.
I do. They were out of the blue. I got to where I would lock my door, which we weren't allowed to do, and she broke the lock on the door. The I don't recall having problems with night terrors or not being able to sleep, but I
How lucky
also
for you,
started
Carrie.
drinking in my 20s.
How
And
lucky.
so
Oh, hey,
usually I didn't have a
Hunter.
problem
It's good to
falling
see you,
asleep
Hunter.
because I think I used alcohol back then to cope and to be able to turn my head off and to be able to pass out essentially. I'm sober now almost a year and a half or a year and 5 months.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and I don't have trouble falling asleep now. What I did have for a long time were nightmares and where I would end up screaming or talking in my sleep. And when I was at the Science and Math School, for example, we had roommates, and they would laugh because I was at that time, I was still, when I first started going there, I was still a believer, and I didn't curse. They thought I was cute because I didn't curse, but in my dreams, I would, in my nightmares, and a lot of my nightmares had to do with, I would be flying and having this sort of sense of euphoria and running and running and running until I could fly and flying, and then I would be pulled down, and it would be my mom hanging on my legs and pulling me back down to earth, or I would be swimming, and some pressure would come from above and start drowning me, and it would be my mom. I had a lot of nightmares where almost every night, at some point I would be like, get the F off of me. And I would be cursing at myself. But in the daytime, I wouldn't curse. But in my dreams, I'm like, get the F off of me, screaming back. Yeah. And so that was something I almost punched my ex-husband in my sleep once, like rolled over, and because I was having a fight with her in my dream. And so it did affect my dreams in that way, I guess, my sleeping. But now I don't have as many of those dreams anymore, which I think is a good sign.
Me neither.
Occasionally I will. I do have every once in a while I have a nightmare about, I started journaling. I like to write, when I was younger, I journaled quite a bit. And a lot of my journals from like high school and college, they got quite a bit maudlin. A lot of them were about her and sort of woe is me, and just like dealing with my sadness about what she wasn't, and these sort of longing kind of posts about what I wish my mom was, and bad poetry about her and stuff. And when I was in college, I had about 6 of those journals that I had left at my parents' house, and they were locked in my filing cabinet underneath the files. And I was living that summer. It was the summer, it was after my first year of college. I was living that summer at a friend's place, and I got a call.
That's a good question, Josh.
From my
How
parents
indeed?
at night. And
how indeed?
My dad was enraged. My mother was on the phone, hysterical, because I guess she didn't want him to tell me, but she'd basically gone through my whole room, had broken into my filing cabinet, had found them hidden beneath the files, and had spent who knows how long reading all of my innermost thoughts, most of which were about her. And then had told my dad some of the things, and then, that made him, the choice things that would make him very angry.
What a violation.
Yeah.
What a violation.
That bothered me for so long. I quit journaling for years. I couldn't go back and read them because I still can't read the old ones. I've started journaling again, but I can't read the old ones because I can't read them without the lens of my mother being there reading them. And yeah, that was a complete complete violation. And I still have nightmares sometimes about having to hide my journals or someone finding them, like these sort of anxiety things about my innermost feelings about her being out in the open. This interview really terrifies me for a lot of reasons, but in a way it feels like, I just don't want her. I mean, I'm sure she will at some point probably see it. But there's like this sense of power that's given up just to even let her know how much she hurt me, And
yes.
someone reading all my thoughts is such a theft. And so that was a big turning point for me in a lot of ways with my parents. And but let me tell you one funny thing. You'll appreciate this. So the things that she had told my dad about that were in the journals were things I had been, experimenting with in college. Social justice, no, but that was in there. But I'd experimented with some drugs that was in there, and so my dad's like, "Are you a drug addict? Are you're trying drugs?" And another was that I'd had a sexual experience with a woman that I didn't like. I wrote about it that I didn't like it, and it wasn't for me.
Things I didn't need to know about Carrie.
No, do you want to take the leftover? No, I couldn't possibly. Thank you.
No, I'm done. But he was so upset and was like, are you a lesbian? And so this is kind of funny. They actually called. They said they wouldn't. My dad didn't want to send me back to help pay for my college anymore. They probably shouldn't have paid for that expensive education. I have a lot of thoughts about that now. But he didn't want to send me back the next year unless I agreed to go to counseling. And so they called, they arranged for me to go to counseling at Duke my sophomore year, and he went with me to the first session. And you'll find this story fine. It's just
I'm gonna be real honest. I wonder what else happened that Carrie wasn't saying. Like, why did they really tell her that she couldn't go back unless she went to counseling? Because I don't believe for one red second that her father was like, you need counseling because you tried drugs in college and slept with a woman one time and didn't like it. Like, I don't believe that's why he demanded that she go to therapy. I don't believe it. I think something else happened. What really happened to force Carrie's father to say, you're not going back unless you go to therapy? Because it weren't sleeping with a girl one time and doing drugs. Which I'm betting wasn't anything more than, like, weed, if we're honest about it. Like, I have a hard time believing Carrie was doing hardcore drugs in college. I could be wrong.
Side note story. We show up for the therapy session, and my therapist is an obvious dyke. And she is very, she has, if it weren't obvious by her appearance, she has rainbow flags everywhere decorated in the office. There's like, it's obvious. But my dad wasn't in an area where you would pick up on those things. And so he had no idea. So we sit down and she says, why are you here today? And he says, Carrie's just getting off the tracks. She's trying drugs. I think she's a lesbian. And and so she talked to him for a while, and then she asked him to leave, and then she said to me, so let's talk about your parents. And then that was funny because they would call periodically and make sure I was still going to see my lesbian counselor, so I didn't become a lesbian. But that was kind of funny. Anyway.
Hey, listeners, guess what? We're on Patreon now. Emotionally dangerous, or they are dangerous because they will, look at the things your mother did, the keeping of the pictures of bruises that didn't even come from what she said they came from, so that she could use them to create a false story about your father or about somebody else in your family. That, but there are some people who are even more extremely dangerous. And if you get yourself into the sights of a sociopath, a straight up sociopath,
Carrie's
or a
called
narcissistic,
Carrie's called me both those
sociopath.
things.
Some people call that malignant narcissist. It's pretty much the same thing.
Oh,
these are the
God.
people that sometimes will dog a person for years, make a person their target and weave elaborate schemes.
I know nothing about that
them.
at all. I know nothing
so
about that, Carrie.
For that reason alone, I suggest to people that, even if you've got somebody in your life or somebody who's in your family who fits this profile, be careful. In fact, be more careful than you think you need to be. Don't give them the free pass because it's my sister or it's my brother. That's not going to stop them. They only know how to hurt you more effectively. They've already done their homework on you.
Yeah. And also in my experience, they will fish for information and try to get, when they're in that phase of building you up, they'll try to get anything they can to pull things out of you. They'll try to get you to talk negatively about other people so that they have these things to hold over your head.
Carrie's
to
done
keep
that
you
to
close
me.
to them. And then if you
She's done that to me.
once you see them for what they are and you don't want to be close to them, if they have any of those things that they've managed to pull out of you, they'll openly threaten you. Like, you know, how would you like it if I spilled these secrets about blah, blah, blah? And it's like, wow, that's who
Carrie-
does that? That's a crazy behavior.
Carrie has accused me of doing explicitly that when I explicitly did not do that. But that's something she has publicly accused me of.
And, you know, in my case, thankfully, the one person I'm thinking of when I'm talking about this didn't have anything to hold over my head, wasn't able to pull things out of me, though she tried. But then they'll just
surviving Carrie Smith.substack.com, and you can see exactly what Carrie has said about me publicly. Which I didn't need anything. Carrie is correct that I never privately tried to get information out of her. Carrie did privately try to get information out of me, and I being that I'm fucking stupid, trusted her. But I've documented everything Carrie has said about me publicly because I didn't need to get private information out of Carrie. All I had to do was take the time to go back and document every single fucking public post that Carrie Smith has made about me in 2 years.
It's like, create fiction. It doesn't matter. They'll just create fiction.
I didn't create fiction, like, Carrie. I posted your tweets on the internet.
When a normal person hears something like an accusation, they'll think it must be grounded in something, even if it's misconstrued. It must be grounded in something.
Right.
Yeah, where's that coming from? How could she possibly say this? And it's like, I don't know. There's no evidence for that because there's no way it could be misconstrued. It's just a bald-faced lie.
I have provided receipts for everything that I've said about Carrie at survivingcarriesmith.substack.com. People can see the evidence for themselves. I didn't need to make shit up. I provided all the receipts.
That is something that people like you, Carrie, and people like me know, because we know cluster B, and even before we knew what it was called, and before we knew that there was actually a population that fit into this intellectual framework, we knew that these people existed because we grew up with them. And many people, and some of you watching and listening,
it was always going to come back to me, wasn't it?
Those of you who are watching and listening, all of you.
Always.
But I'm speaking now to those of you who have not had a cluster B in your lives. You tend to think that everybody, all humans, are essentially good or essentially stable, and that all humans, when it comes right down to it, really do mean well. It's just that some of them make a mistake in how to get there. You are in danger if you believe that. That is a false belief, and you are in danger. Most people are not personality disorder.
Brave and beautiful, Carrie. Brave and beautiful.
But this is not just a few people. Although it's a minority, it's not just 1%. And I'm sorry, I don't believe the official estimates in the medical literature. I do not believe for 1 second that only 2% of the population has borderline personality disorder. I do not believe for 1 second that only 1% is narcissistic and only 1% is sociopathic. I don't believe it.
I don't believe that anymore either. So that's interesting because I came to this conclusion.
It's like you guys see narcissists everywhere.
Past year, where I said, you know, I used to think it was a very small minority of the population, but I certainly don't think it's most people, but I think
no, it isn't.
Like I said, we've all met someone who has one of these personality disorders. There's more of them than I used to think, I guess, put it that way. And
I think I think we are actually growing more of them.
Well, that's interesting. That's what I wanted to talk to you about was how you kind of tie this into social justice ideology. And I saw a tweet of yours. I saw it today. I don't know if you tweeted it today, but you said something about how when you talk about social justice ideology being like a collective personality disorder, you don't mean as an analogy. You mean actually there are people.
I mean it literally.
Literally, there are people with personality disorders who get into this cult of belief. And
Yes.
I think that's interesting because most often when I've made the analogy, it's been more of like, I've said it it's as if it's a collective kind of borderline personality disorder. But I'm starting to agree with you. I do think there's a lot of BPD people in it who get drawn to it.
Yeah. I think so too. I think part of it is selection, right? It's self-selection. So there are certain areas of life and certain social circles that tend to be places where a borderline or a narcissist can make a good social living, and social justice is the place where they can make the best social living. So I think that we should expect that cluster Bs are self-selecting themselves into the social justice world. So, that could make it appear that there are more of them at large than there really are.
Yeah.
But I've thought about this more broadly, and I've talked to my therapist about this too. And in fact, a few shows ago, I pulled a few statistics out. There's not a lot, but the literature that is out there
he's in
does
therapy?
show that there has been a rise
right.
in people meeting the criteria for borderline narcissistic and histrionic personality disorder. And it's happened over the past couple of generations. And it coincides, many people, even if you haven't heard of that, people have heard of the recent studies in the past 10 years that have shown an alarming drop in the level of empathy in US college students. Lack of empathy is about cluster B, right? It doesn't mean that everybody who has an empathy problem is a cluster B, but lacking empathy, lacking a conscience, or lacking fully functional empathy is one of the core characteristics of these personality disorders.
Yeah.
So, I think that we're seeing them more. I think that they're having a day right now. They're having a day in the sun because social justice has become mainstream. But I also think that in the latter half of the 20th century, that yes, a combination of our culture and frankly very poor parenting, not even outright abusive parenting, but just very poor parenting, has probably had something to do with that.
I think so too, because I think some of it maybe comes from not having stable, loving relationships at a young age with your parents. A lot of people with according to what I've read in Understanding the Borderline Mother and other books, is if you have a borderline parent, it's very likely you're going to have some characteristics of borderline. And, I don't know, it's kind of a repeating thing. I just wanted to mention something before I forget it. So just anecdotally, the number of people I know who are in social justice who admit to being borderline and almost wear it as a badge of honor and pride because it shows that they're marginalized, right? That's growing. And there's a picture I sent you of an old friend of mine who it was sort of when I started waking up and leaving social justice ideology was around the time that she really doubled down and went way deep into it. And she has what you told me are the borderline glasses. The SJW glasses. She's got one of the different styles of SJW hair. In her case, it's the multicolored hair. But she takes a lot of pictures of herself wearing. She's a white woman. She takes a lot of pictures of herself wearing these with this angry look on her face, glaring defiantly in the camera, with a T-shirt that says, like, this one says "F around and find out." This one says white.
She wears a "fuck
violence.
Around and find out" shirt, and you think that means that, like, libertarians wear those
this
too?
One
carries.
says Black lives still effing matter. It's just a lot of. Here's one that says, a T-shirt says "Blue Lives Murder," and she's just glaring at the camera. In between her posts,
they're full of rage.
She's full of rage, and in between her posts, though, about social justice issues, which are full of rage, then there's these really despondent posts they're kind of like, woe is me, where she goes into long explanation of what borderline is like. And she'll, especially during Borderline Awareness Month, which is a thing. I don't know if you celebrated, but it was.
Oh, stop. Kevin, cut this woman off.
But during Borderline Awareness Month, she'll post these long things of just, and it's like, it's not someone
Borderline Awareness Month. Hasn't it been Borderline Awareness Month for about 6 fucking years already?
Yes, they don't, what they're doing during Borderline Awareness Month, they're not actually helping people. And social justice doesn't help people get out of mental health issues. It doesn't help people with borderline.
It validates their issues.
It tells them to stay in it because, hey, this is your oppressed identity, and you get social currency by being oppressed in this way. Yeah, and so all of her posts are sort of written from the tone of voice of, this is what it's like to be borderline. You should thank God you're not afflicted like me. Poor me. I have this disorder, this mental health disorder, and this is how society should change to cater to me and to my borderline issues. That's how it's written.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely classic. And the thing is, I mean, this, I would say, we are all afflicted by these people. Right? They do suffer. They absolutely do suffer, but that doesn't excuse the suffering they give to us. And I think that that's one of the things you learn when you put up those boundaries and those barriers. Carrie, you have given us a lot of your time, and you have you've shared things that I know that you haven't talked about in detail before. And I want to say again, thank you. I'm honored that you chose to do that. And I want to let you go so that you can attend to Tiger and get your dinner ready and stuff. And I was trying to figure out how to close this interview out. And I thought just like a really fast round of yes or no questions. Are you game for it? I'm just trying out an experiment.
I'm game for it.
Okay. All right. So here we go. These are just yes or no questions. Think of it like a verbal Rorschach test. Whatever comes to your mind first, just give an answer. Number 1, mayonnaise or mustard?
Mustard.
Yeah. God.
Wrong. Number 2.
Okay. I see how this is going to go.
Yeah, you do. Benson and Hedges or Marlboro?
Marlboro.
Okay, that's correct. I would also have accepted both and bring us a wine list. Question 3, winter or summer?
Winter.
Correct. Number 4, Betty Davis or Joan Crawford?
Oh, Betty Davis.
I'm going to have you back. I'm going to do a deep dive on Joan Crawford and we'll watch some Mommy Dearest. I'm going to see if our schedules can match up, because I think you'd have good fun coming on with that.
Yeah.
The last one is, I want promo your show. Where can listeners find Unsafe Space with you and Carter Laren? And where and when can they find the live chats that you guys do when you do the show?
Yeah, we are at unsafespace.com, and you can find us on YouTube under Unsafe Space, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts, iTunes, wherever, Unsafe Space. We have a book club coming up. We read a book a month. We alternate between fiction and nonfiction, and it's free to join and be a part of the live discussion. You can find out about the current book this month if you go to unsafespace.com, the book club page. And our live videos are every Monday and Friday at 1:00 Texas time.
I'm going to try to join you for some of those. I haven't yet, but when I listen to you talk and I hear you reading the super chats, I'm like, I need to know all these people. They all sound like good fun.
We have good fun people in the chat.
Sadly, Carrie destroyed the community at Unsafe Space when she defamed Carter on the internet.
Okay. Anytime I can be helpful,
all right. It seems like we're rounding down, but just in case you couldn't hear me talking over the video, I just said, sadly, that community no longer exists because Carrie destroyed it when she defamed Carter up and down the internet. I'm just saying. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for Nitwits. We're about 3 hours now, so I think that that's enough. I think, listen, man, I want to say this. Like, again, I don't find Josh Slocum particularly compelling. I don't think if you want to learn about narcissism, listen to H.G. Tudor. If you want to actually learn about narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder, HG Tutor. Listen to him. He has some of the best narcissism content that I've heard anywhere. He is a narcissistic psychopath. He is unapologetic about it. His content is brilliant. It's entertaining. Don't just listen to the stuff he does about Meghan Markle. Okay, you can enjoy that if you want, but like listen to his stuff about the disorder because it's really fucking good. It is much better than what I've seen from Josh Slocum so far. I don't, you know, Carrie's gonna carry. Like it's the same thing per usual. So I don't really have anything else to say there. But I don't know why people find Josh Slocum really all that compelling because I haven't seen anything from him that I find compelling. And like I said, I like to be fair when I like to be fair when I'm doing this sort of thing in that I do actually like that they're talking about their experiences with their parents. I think it's good for people to hear that. I think it'll be reassuring for a lot of people. However, both of these two are being really irresponsible with how they're doing it because they're not managing their own baggage. Deborah, I think you should start a YouTube channel. Deborah, you should come on sometime and we can analyze these videos together. I think that'd actually be a great component of Nitwits. But I absolutely think you should. I think you've got a lot to add. I think it would be a great idea. All right, guys, I will be back tomorrow. I don't know what I'm streaming, but if you have an idea of something that you would like me to watch, let me know. Again, I'm doing light streams pretty much through the end of the year because it's the holidays. We don't need to be serious all the time. I got a lot of stuff I'm working on behind the scenes. I'm really excited to share it with you guys when I can. But for right now, please mount that like button on the way out the door, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you soon. Bye.